Immortal Cultivation begins with time management. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 151, which Jing continues to test Chetong Xuan's room of the ancient Jirijiao, and in the Behind Palace, Jing stood in front of the vast bookshelf and began to search patiently by name, repeating the name in her heart. Ah, I got it. She found a bamboo slip, held it in her hand, and carefully opened it. According to ancient records, after the end of the war between and Jiri, all the great powers retired, and the cultivation world entered a long period of peace. Then it began to enter the Dharma Ending Age. Chetong Xuan's room was a great power of the Jirijiao in the Dharma Ending Age. His strength lies in his multidisciplinary skills, profound Taoism, sharp swordsmanship, powerful magic weapons, and erudition. He is proficient in various unorthodox methods, and even his Kagong method is original. The Wanfei Xuan sect he founded was once one of the most powerful sects of the Jirijiao, but it suffered a heavy blow when the Jirijiao was destroyed, and its subsequent ups and downs were uncertain, and finally it was completely cut off from the Taoism 4,000 years ago. Seeing this, which Jing began to think secretly. Chetong Xuan's really existed, and he was also the founder of Wanfei Xuan sect. This story was not widely circulated in the mortal world. After all, not everyone was interested in ancient history. Knowing this name, Wei Dongliu's so-called accidental inheritance from ancient times seemed to have a bit more credibility. On the other side of shipping mounting, in a quiet room, Wei Dongliu was teaching Hero Jin the eliminating demons and separating the clear and turbid sutra. How can it be the same as manipulating the yin energy at the deep valley, seeking the spirit of the galloping horse, walking across the sea to seek salvation, and driving a hairy car on a volcano? How can you not be careful? How can you not be careful? At this point, he stopped explaining and asked, "Do you understand?" "No." Yuo Jin shook his head honestly. Wei Dongliu fell silent. How many times has he explained this? It seems to be the 7th time. What don't you understand? He suppressed his impatience and continued to ask. Yuo Jin mentioned a few points that he didn't understand, and Wei Dongliu answered them one by one. Now I understand almost everything. Yuo Jin thought for a long time and finally said dully, "Go practice." Wei Dongliu waved his hand. After leaving the quiet room, he found Jing standing by the lake, staring at the spiritual herd planted in the depression. When renovating the valley, Wei Dongliu took the opportunity to go to Penglai and bought all kinds of raw materials needed for running the sect, such as flour and grass seeds, furniture and utensils, etc. And brought the 100 poisons gold and silkworm with him. Although it is still a little thin and shabby compared to many small sects, it is basically no problem for people to live there for a long time. Fellow Taoist Wei, the base of the Wanfei Xuan sect is quite well designed. Jing said with a smile, although it is small, it has all the necessary facilities. It's just a trifle. Wei Dongliu waved his hand. Fellow Taoist Jing, do you want to take a walk around? I was the first one to discover this mountain. Is there anywhere I haven't been to? Jingling's eyes rolled. Why don't I take fellow Taoist Wei to tour the Taihang Mountains for a few days and buy some necessary things? Fellow Taoist Wei pondered for a moment, thinking that this was a good opportunity to find out the true situation of Fanshindo, so he nodded and agreed. Okay. After telling Yuo Jin not to go out and leaving him a 1,000-year-old polygon multiple run to fill his stomach, Wei Dongliu followed Jingling to leave Shipping Mountain and fly north along the Taihang Mountains. Doyaway. Jing suddenly said, in the past, the Wanfei Xuan sect was in charge of the entire Fanshindo and enclosed the entire Taihang Mountains within the sect's headquarters. Compared to the current situation of disunity, it is really a pity. Wei Dongliu knew her intention to test her very well, and said lightly, "The way of heaven is constant. After a long period of unity, it must be divided. How can there be a sect that lasts forever? I just want to restore my sect's orthodoxy now, and don't mention anything else." Wei is quite open-minded. Seeing that he was not at all hooked, the witch Jing narrowed her eyes slightly. If the way of heaven is cyclical and the retribution is like this, then the 3 pure ones of the Orthodox Church should also suffer, which is fair. There was a lot of meaning in her words, which reminded Wei Dongliu of the previous dragon riot in Shushan. He couldn't help but be alert in his heart, but he said, "The way of heaven is constant, but it is not an orderly change, but the survival of the fittest. The strong will survive, but if they occupy the world, they will inevitably become lazy over time, and thus turn from strong to weak, so the rise will inevitably decline. What a saying that the fittest will survive, and everything that goes up must decline. Jiangling clapped his hands and laughed. Doorway's remarks are so in line with the spirit of our Jiri sect. You must know that there are 50 great ways, and 49 are derived from heaven, but one is removed. I should take this one, and it all comes down to the word fight. Her eyes sparkled, and the corners of her mouth curled up charmingly, and she smiled. In the ancient battle between Njiri, our Jiri sect was defeated due to lack of strength, but the sect said that it was determined by the destiny of heaven. How absurd. One day, if the 3 pure ones of the Orthodox sect fall one after another, I would like to know if they dare to say it is the result of destiny. Oh? Wei Dongliu pretended to be interested. From what Doi Jing said, it seems that the 3 pure ones of the righteous sect are about to suffer a disaster. Jianglin continued to smile, but did not answer directly, but asked back. If Doi Wei lets the 6 waves of the demon sect to attack the 3 pure ones of the Orthodox sect, how will he arrange the plan? Wei Dongliu thought for a moment and said, if I were to arrange the attack, we would have to openly attack Shushan and secretly attack Penglai. Oh? Jianglin was slightly stunned. Why is that? The Shushan sword immortal pursues enlightenment between life and death, so he is extremely daring and warlike. Wei Dongliu said with a smile, if we attack the other 2 sects, the Shushan sword immortal will definitely come to help. So we must attack Shushan first to involve its ability to help. Which Jing seemed to be thinking about something. Then what about a secret attack on Penglai? Why not Kunlun? Because among the 3 religions, Penglai is the weakest and Kunlun is the strongest. Wei Dongliu replied, how can we abandon the weak to attack the strong? What's more, even the weakest Penglai is not something that the 6 parts of the demon sect can defeat. Penglai is best at refining weapons and elixirs. The benefits that can be obtained by plundering Penglai must be far greater than plundering Kunlun. Jianglin was silent for a while, and suddenly said, didn't fellow Daoist Wei inherit the master's teachings by chance? How do you know so much about the situation in the world of cultivation? Since you want to enter the world of cultivation, you naturally have to find out the situation of all parties. Wei Dongliu said lightly. When these words fell into Jianglin's ears, combined with his mysterious personality, the taste suddenly changed. This person can actually infer so much information without any clues. Jiangmon was secretly shocked. If it were other demon sect cultivators, it would not be surprising to come up with these conclusions based on their understanding of the situation in the world of cultivation, but didn't this Wei Dongliu just join the mortal life path? Before this, he claimed to be wandering around as a casual cultivator. How could he know so much? There is definitely something wrong with this person. At least he can't be an ordinary casual cultivator. Jianglin was very sure in his heart, and on the surface he was smiling and chatting with him enthusiastically. Wei Dongliu remained calm, just listening to the reminder of the synchronization value +1 broadcast by the Kunlun mirror, and his mood became more and more cheerful. As Jianglin became more and more suspicious of his origins, the synchronization value of the mysterious person's setting became higher and higher, and he could feel that the talent of the Chaos Demon body was gradually emerging. If you can obtain magic skills or magic weapons from the magic sect in the future, as long as you use the magic energy to drive them, you can exert extraordinary power. Chapter 152 No one knows sword forging better than me. The 2 of them passed through the layers of Tearham Mountains and finally arrived at Yunto Mountain. Here, there is the largest Yunto market in Tearham Mountain, which is a market for free trade within the Fanxingdu and with the outside world. Before officially entering the market, Jianglin conjured up 2 masks like a magic trick and handed the dog head mask to Wei Dongliu. Do you have to wear a mask to enter this Watai Mountain market? Wei Dongliu took the mask and asked hesitantly. Not really. Which Jing said straightforwardly, if you are not afraid of being hunted down after leaving the market. Before she finished speaking, Wei Dongliu sighed and put on the dog head mask on his head. Jianglin also put on the cat face mask and took him into the market. As soon as he stepped into the market, Wei Dongliu's eyes were surprised. What a scene of demons dancing wildly. I saw that almost everyone in the market was wearing dark robes. Those who had black robes wore black robes, and those who didn't wore grey robes and brown robes. They all wore various masks on their faces, making them look like smugglers. No wonder Witch Jing suggested that I wear a mask. If I go in with my face facing forward, I will definitely become the focus of everyone's attention. Although in fact, this face also wears an invisible mask of mirror flowers and water moons. What are you going to buy? Jiangling turned around and asked. The crisp and cute voice, coupled with a cute cat's head mask, did not show any witch temperament at all. Let's buy some flying swords and magic weapons first. Wei Dongliu replied. Now the material reserves in the sect are basically purchased by Luoyan from Pengliu King Temple. But as a righteous sect, Yu King Temple is righteous in both flying swords and magic weapons, and there will not be any sinister magic weapons tainted with demonic energy. Wei Dongliu's talent is Chaos Demon Body. When using magic energy to drive Taoism, flying swords and magic weapons, his unique physique will be added, so the corresponding magic weapons must naturally be replaced with magic energy models. If you want magic weapons, you have to go to Old Ghost Yan. Jiangling held his chin with his fingers and said thoughtfully. Old Ghost Yan? Wei Dongliu asked doubtfully. Well, it's a senior who uses smoke magic weapons to cover his figure. You'll know when you see it. Jiangling took him around and finally found a stall in the corner of the market. The stall was just a long table, on which various flying swords and magic weapons were placed. The luster was mainly black and purple, with grey and brown. The in energy was vast and the ghost energy was eerie. Obviously, they were all magic weapons of sinister nature. Standing behind the long table was a large group of extremely thick smoke, and it was impossible to see who was in it. Old Ghost Yan. Which Jing greeted him and said nonchalantly, "You're out setting up a stall again today. Where is your wife from last time?" Hihihi. The cloud of smoke made a hoarse and piercing laugh, as if rubbing against sandpaper. That wife has been killed by me. Little witch, if you want to replace her, now is your chance. Who would be interested in an old man like you? Jiangling sneered and said contemptuously, "Isn't that wife very well behaved? How could she not last a month? When she cooked wontons for me in the morning, she actually put coriander in it without even asking." Smoke muttered, "How could an old man like me eat such a stinky thing? So I could only kill her with a palm, and then put her head in the cave, so that the next wife I find will know to ask my opinion before cooking. Why, the one next to you, is she your new lover? Don't talk nonsense, or we will bat you and have your tongue twisted." Jiangling picked up a magic weapon, looked at it carefully for a moment, turned around and said to Wei Dongliu, "This old man Yan is one of the best weapon refiners in Tiehang Mountain. The ones he sells are all high-end products, but they're a bit expensive. Of course, the only thing I can show off is my weapon-making skills." Old Ghost Yan said proudly, "I will charge you 10% more spirit stones than the market price. I'm honest and fair to everyone. No bargaining." Wei Dongliu picked up a flying sword on the table, looked at it over and over for a while, and asked. "A 9th level flying sword made of ghost fine wood. It is finely polished, but why is rotten water added? Without adding rotten water, how can the in-spirit in it be purified?" Old Ghost Yan sneered disdainfully, "The stench of corpses permeates it and will not dissipate for a long time. Can you bear it? So why do you want to use the flesh and blood of boys to nourish the ghost fine wood?" Wei Dongliu shook his head. "The flesh and blood of mortals, although full of turbid qi, must be extremely mixed. Even if you deliberately took a young boy, no matter how little grains and cereals you get, it can't be that pure. Don't talk nonsense." Old Ghost Yan roared angrily, "What else can we use if we don't use the flesh and blood of boys? The flesh and blood of babies is not enough to make swords, and using more babies will make it more mixed. Why bother with the flesh and blood of mortals?" Wei Dongliu sighed and said, "Have you never heard of the 9 nether in soul stone?" 9 nether? Old Ghost Yan just said 2 words, and the rest of the words were stuck in his throat. Who doesn't know that the 9 nether in soul stone is more suitable for making swords than mortal flesh and blood? But this thing only grows in mass graves with heavy in energy, or deep underground in ancient battlefields. How can it be so easy to find? Humph, you actually know about the 9 nether in soul stone. I underestimated you. A lot of thought went through Old Ghost Yan's mind, and finally he said, "I understand. You want to say that you are also knowledgeable and ask me not to fool you with these inferior items on the table, right?" Jiangling. For a moment, her expression under the mask was extremely wonderful. The words that praised Old Ghost Yan before were still ringing in her ears, but now it seemed as if she was slapping her hard. Wei Dongliu did not comment. After hearing the prompt of the increase in synchronization value, he just continued. After the destruction of Chanji, the ancient casting method was also lost. How good can a 9th level magic weapon flying sword be? If you can't take out a 10th level magic weapon, we won't waste our time here. What a young man, you dare to say that? Old Ghost Yan laughed, and suddenly waved his arms made of smoke and brushed away everything on the table. What do you want? A magic weapon or a flying sword? First, a 10th level fairy sword. Wait, Liu said in a deep voice. A fairy sword suddenly flew out of the smoke and landed on the table with a thud. The evil sword of 10,000 ghosts. Old Ghost Jan said grimly, this sword is made of the inner iron of the netherworld, and it has been washed with the water of the Yellow Spring for 49 days. It has the power to capture the soul and control the heart. Does it meet your requirements? The evil sword of 10,000 ghosts? Jiangling suddenly reminded, isn't it the 11th level fairy sword that the Ingido has been looking for many years? That's it. Old Ghost Jan snorted coldly, if I wasn't afraid that I would use this sword outside and be hunted by those mad dogs of the Ingido, why would I sell it here? Friend Wei. Which Jiang sneered several times and said dimly, the characteristics of this sword are too obvious. Every time the sword is drawn, hundreds of ghosts will cry. It can't be hidden at all. If you buy this sword, unless you put it in the box and don't use it, it will sooner or later reach the ears of the Ingido. I bought it. Wei Donglian made the decision. Chapter 153. The 11th rank Immortal Sword is obtained. Since the upper and lower limits of the 10th level Immortal Swords are too different, many cultivators jokingly call those particularly powerful and well-known Immortal Swords 11th level Immortal Swords. The Wangyi Shi Jing Sword is also a well-known level among Immortal Swords. Although it is not as good as the old brands such as the Qifeng Sword and the Li Dongwei Chen Sword, it probably just reaches the threshold of the 11th level. In addition, according to ancient records, there should be 1,000 Demon Soul Sword, which was made by the same ancient grade swordsmith. But later, the 1,000 Demon Soul Sword disappeared for some reason, and only the Wangyi Shi Jing Sword was circulated in the Skull Mountain of the Jirizhao sect, killing all kinds of terrifying records. Therefore, it is natural for the Ingido to regard it as a symbol of the Taoism and search for it at all costs. If it were other immortal swords, Yan Laogi would definitely not take action, but the noise of this sword coming out of the sheath was too loud, and Yingadea was a famous mad dog in the demon sect, so he didn't dare to use it openly. It's better to sell it. Wei Dongliu directly decided I'll buy it, which made old Ghost Jan ecstatic immediately. But the next second, he was pulled aside by Jiangling, and the two whispered. Fellow Daoist Wei, there is indeed a problem with the sword. Jiang Munu advised earnestly, legend has it that every time the sword is activated, there will be all kinds of tragic cries, resounding for 100 miles, and it can't be hidden at all. The Ingido regards this sword as a lost treasure of the sect. If they know that you own this sword, they will definitely come to kill you at all costs, unless you put it away and never leave it, but then what's the point of buying this sword? Collection. Wei Dongliu said. Jiangling. You're right. Wei Dongliu suddenly said loudly, then turned around and looked at the sword reluctantly, saying, after all, I can't use it. I'm afraid it will rot in my hands if I buy it. Yan Laogi. Enough, enough. He could see what the other party meant, so he said impatiently, if you want to bargain, then bargain. You name the price first. 40 taels of top-grade spirit stones. Wei Dongliu said. How about I give you 40 taels of top-grade spirit stones, and you can buy an 11th level fairy sword from anywhere at this price, and I'll give you this Wangyi Shi Jing sword for free, okay? Yan Laogi said helplessly. That's different. Wei Dongliu said, your sword cannot be used. If you use it, it will attract the Ingido. How can it be calculated at a normal price? And if I buy your sword, I have to be on guard against you turning around and informing on the Ingido after completing the transaction. I have to take risks too, okay? I'm not telling any secrets. Old Ghost Jan was furious. The Ingido asked me how I knew the sword was in your hand, and I said that I sold it to you personally. Will the Ingido grind me to ashes? 200 high-grade spirit stones, otherwise, no deal. 200 is too much. Wei Dongliu began to bargain skillfully. This is a high-grade spirit stone. Unless your family has a large-scale spirit stone mine, who can come up with 200 high-grade spirit stones? It won't be sold in another 1,000 years. 100, I can still afford it if I grit my teeth. 100, you might as well buy a scabbard. Old Ghost Jan sneered, why should I sell it to you if I can't afford 200? I won't sell it to a wealthy sect. Wake up, if you go to the sect, it's just like seeking your own death, okay? Wei Dongliu laughed, the sect bought the sword but didn't kill you, waiting for you to go to the Ingido to tell the secret, right? Old Ghost Jan was speechless. The reason why he didn't sell the Wangyi Shi Jing sword to the major sects was because of this concern. The sect couldn't ensure that he wouldn't go to the Ingido to tell the secret and earn the second share of money after the transaction was completed, so he must be eliminated, so that the news of the Wangi Jin sword was completely blocked and there was no possibility of leakage. In other words, old Ghost Yang could only choose casual cultivators as sellers. After all, casual cultivators have no burden and can run around the world at any time. They don't need to risk their lives to fight him and kill people. But casual cultivators who can afford 200 spirit stones are probably more scarce than the 11th level immortal sword, 160. Old Ghost Yan decided to give in. For him, even if it was a 12th level immortal sword, it would be garbage if he couldn't use it, and it might also attract the invaluable, which was like a hot potato. 140. Wei Dongliu said lightly, recently, the exchange rate between high-grade spirit stones and medium-grade spirit stones is increased to about 1 to 120, so of course the price has to be adjusted accordingly. TSK. Old Ghost Yan frowned, and his mind sank. In just a few minutes of conversation, this dock-headed guest in front of him showed a rich understanding of casting knowledge, an accurate grasp of the market situation, and an extremely cunning and shameless style. It is indeed the most difficult and disgusting guest he has met in all these years. He even had a suspicion that this person could not be a casual cultivator, but more likely a direct disciple from a major sect, otherwise there was no way to explain the qualities he showed. No, I have to slip away quickly, otherwise if it's a little later at night, I might be blocked outside the Yunto market by the other party. 104 is 104. He gritted his teeth and said, but it must be cash. Pay it all at once. Wei Dongliu nodded, and took out a storage bag from his sleeve. Although his family didn't have a mine, Luo Yan was working in Tiangong workshop, which had a strong ability to attract money. After accumulating for this period of time, he had accumulated nearly 150 taels of high-quality spiritual stones, all of which were given to Wei Dongliu to start a business. Unexpectedly, they were all spent now. As the high-quality spiritual stones fell on the table, the breathing of Yan Laogi and Jianglin became heavy. This man was so rich that he actually brought so many high-quality spiritual stones with him. Okay. Wei Dongliu put away the storage bag, count them, and you can hand them over. Yan Laogi swallowed a mouthful of saliva, forcibly suppressed the urge to take these spiritual stones and run away, just threw the Wangi Jin sword to him first, and then quickly began to count the weight of the spiritual stones. After quickly counting, Yan Laogi laughed softly, and the smoke around him suddenly stretched into a line, and quickly soared into the sky and disappeared. Yan Laogi just ran away like this? Jianglin said in confusion. Well, there is no problem with the goods. Wei Dongliu said lightly, putting away the Wangi Jin sword and preparing to take it back for refining. This time he was able to buy an 11th level immortal sword, although it was a relatively poor immortal sword at the same level, and it was also a hot potato, not convenient to use, but such a gain still far exceeded his expectations. Not to mention that in the process, Jiangmo Envy and Yan Laogi both contributed countless synchronization points to his mysterious personality. After returning, he can use the innate qualifications of the Chaos Demon body to refine the pure demonic energy first, and then refine this Wangi Jin sword. Congratulations to fellow Daoist Wei for fulfilling his long-cherished wish. Jianglin suppressed his greedy thoughts and smiled softly beside him. The forbidden method sealed on this Wangi Jin sword specializes in the 3 souls and 7 spirits of a person, and is known for being unpredictable and difficult to defend against. Even the howling of the 10,000 ghosts when it is activated has the effect of shocking the mind, it's just that the sound is a bit loud, and it really can't be concealed. Don't worry, fellow Daoist Jiang. Wei Dongliu said gently, I have my own way to deal with the howling of the 10,000 ghosts. Sure enough. Jianglin was startled in his heart. The reason why this guy dared to buy the Wangi Jin sword is that he was sure to deal with the howling of the 10,000 ghosts. It's just, even the problem that old Ghost Yan was unable to do anything about, he actually has a way to solve it. Is he better than old Ghost Yan in casting? Wei Dongliu, who are you? Mysterious character, synchronization value +1. Chapter 154. Ask Kingpin about internal affairs. After returning to Shipping Mountain and saying goodbye to Jianglin, Wei Dongliu went to check on Guo Jin. At this time, Guo Jin was sitting upright on the stone bed, posing the key-refining posture of 5 hearts facing the sky, breathing slowly, and opening up that key. The Shinsuyan needle that Jianglin gave him was wrapped in black cloth and placed on the stone table next to him. It seemed that he had not touched it since he came back. He ate a part of the 1,000-year-old polygon multiple rum that Wei Donliu gave him before leaving the mountain, and the rest was left in the basin without touching it. This aged polygon multiple rum is the most resistant to hunger, and it is also very good for fasting. Chetong Xuanxing runs the Sutra of eliminating demons and spirits and separating the clear and turbid also includes the method of fasting ki refining. This basic entry step is basically the same for all major sects, and even Kunlun's fasting ki refining method is not much better. After confirming that Yuo Jin was still practicing hard, Wei Dongliu returned to his room leisurely, also posing the posture of 5 hearts facing the sky, and practicing the mind method. He was already at the transformation palace stage. After practicing the mental method of eliminating demons and separating the clear and turbid sutra for a while, he felt that his ki suddenly became heavy, like a weight hanging in his lower abdomen. Nowadays, whether it is the 3 pure ones of the Orthodox sect, the 6 parts of the demon sect, or Buddhism, Confucianism and other unorthodox sects, there are thousands of breathing methods, but in essence, they are all about refining turbidity and transforming it into clearness. That is, the turbid air in the body is refined and discharged, and the fresh air is absorbed from the outside world to replenish it, and it is constantly purified. The reason is also very simple. The clear air is ethereal, and the turbid air is dull. The former is light and can be refined into true ki, which can be used to drive magic, improve physical fitness, and improve realms. The latter is turbid, like silt, and it is difficult to activate, so it cannot be used. For these turbid air, the Orthodox sect often discards them and discharges them all. The demon sect, however, often retains a very small amount of turbid air and uses the magic method to purify and refine it into demonic energy, carefully accumulating it in the ki. When necessary, it will push the true ki to wrap it up and send it out, and cooperate with the method to hurt people. This so-called demonic energy is tens of millions times more inert than turbid air and is extremely difficult to remove, just like snake venom. If it touches a magic weapon, it will pollute the spirituality and become uncontrollable. If it hits a monk, the monk's meridians will be blocked and his cultivation will be lost. It is an extremely vicious means of fighting. Not long after, Wei Dongliu used the eliminating demons and separating the pure and turbid sutra to reverse the mental method, so that all his true essence was transformed into demonic essence. If it were an ordinary demon cultivator, it would be impossible to do this. This jade mansion is 100% demonic essence, and the Danton would have burst and died long ago. But Wei Dongliu has a chaotic demon body, and any demonic energy in his body can flow freely like pure air. The same is true for the demonic essence condensed by demonic energy. After the conversion, Wei Dongliu stood up and looked into the bronze mirror. The result was a shock. The man in the mirror had clear and handsome features, and the size and position did not change. But the iris of his eyes turned from brown to black, and his hair turned from jet black to dark red. Although his skin color was dull, he did not have the feeling of being weak due to lack of blood color. Instead, he had a bit more evil and rebellious intention. What a cool demon king. TSK, TSK, TSK. Kunlun Mirror did not speak in the sea of consciousness, but just made a sound of TSK, TSK. Wei Dongliu knew that Arjun was mocking him for self-praise and shamelessness, so he said in a deep voice, "What's there to TSK? Arjun has never seen such a handsome and evil demon king." Okay, whatever you say is what I will say," Kunlun Mirror said helplessly. Wei Dongliu was too lazy to pay attention to it, but just tapped his left hand in the air several times to set up an isolation formation. He raised his right arm and waved his hand, and the Wangyi Shi Jing sword bounced off the table. The hilt of the sword fell into his palm, and the Malo demon essence was infused into it, and immediately the sound of thousands of ghosts crying sounded. He only heard that voice as resentful, as sad, as sobbing, as complaining, and it was heard by the ears, and the sound was shocking. Even though Wei Dongliu had great concentration, he couldn't stand the sound of ghosts crying. He relied on the help of Kunlun Mirror to calm his mind. Good guy. This Wangyi Shi Jing sword is indeed an 11th level immortal sword. Without anyone deliberately using it, just the lowest power of Wangyi Crying can make me, a cultivator of the water level, fall into it. If I use all my strength to work it, wouldn't I be able to fight against Jintan's Hinran? It's quite good for plotting against others. Kingping's sword said. Kingping. Wei Dongliu laughed in his heart. I've been waiting for you to speak. This sword is good in other aspects, but the sound of Wangyi crying can't be controlled freely. I can't cry so hard every time I draw my sword that people within a radius of dozens of miles can hear it. My mysterious personality is about to collapse. Do you have any way to help me train this Wangyi Shi Jing sword, just like you did with the Lady Jian last time? Your sword doesn't have a sword spirit, how can I train it? King Ping's sword said with a chuckle. No sword spirit? Wei Dongliu frowned, his eyes suddenly sharpened. How can an 11th level immortal sword not have a sword spirit? First of all, there is no such thing as an 11th level immortal sword. Kunlun Mirror added on the side. Secondly, not all immortal swords have sword spirits. That's right. King Ping's sword echoed. If I'm not mistaken, the successive owners of this sword have never properly nurtured this sword. The sword master is ruthless, so where does the sword spirit come from? In that case, Wei Dongliu still refused to give up, but continued to ask, there must be other ways to block the wailing of thousands of ghosts, right? To block the wailing of thousands of ghosts, you must at least know why there is a crying sound first. King Ping's sword said lightly, this sword is forged with netherworldly iron and washed with yellow spring water. Both of them have extremely strong soul-binding power. You mean, the so-called crying sound is emitted by some of the souls that were plundered by the thousands of creatures that died under this sword? King Ping's sword replied, because the number is so large, the combined sound can shock the mind and scatter the soul. If you want to block these crying sounds, it's very simple, find some red lotus karma fire to burn them for a few days, kill all the souls inside, and the crying sounds will naturally stop. How can this be done? Wei Dongliu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm not trying to eliminate the wailing of all ghosts. I just want it to become controllable from being uncontrollable. In other words, it can only cry if I let it cry. If I don't let it cry, it will shut up and not make any sound for me. King Ping's sword. It's really troublesome to meet such a sword master who always makes unreasonable demands. It's not that there is no way. King Ping's sword pondered for a long time, sighed and said, these souls don't have much consciousness, they are just stimulated by the remaining pain of death, so they make crying sounds. However, death is not only about the remaining pain, there should also be great fear. You only need to penetrate the sword with the 5 metals, and you can scare these souls and make them dare not make a sound. I see. Wei Dongliu seemed to be enlightened. Then, what is the 5 metals? What is penetrating the sword? The energy of the 5 metals is the energy of killing. King Ping's sword said helplessly, use your Xiao Fu Shangyang sword energy. As for the sword penetration, I have a method here, called True Spirit Seal Sword Technique, which can allow the Taoism to attach to the flying sword. You'll listen carefully. Yes, King Ping, you say. Wei Dongliu immediately perked up and began to listen to King Ping's sword's explanation of the method. Sure enough, if you're undecided about external affairs, ask Jin, and if you're undecided about internal affairs, ask King Ping. With their help, why worry about the difficulty of finding the great way? Chapter 155 No. Point 3. Penglai Fairy Island, Yuking Temple. Character Identity. Luoyan. Mirror Flower Water Moon Template overwritten, currently traveling through time and space. Returning to Penglai Yuking Temple, Luoyan once again sorted out the timeline of this character. Compared to the Queen Mother of the West Secret Realm in Kunlun and the Demon Locking Tower trial in Shushan, Penglai has been relatively quiet since the trip to the palace. If there is anything, it was when I went out with Mishi last time, and I accidentally heard a passing monk talking about 100,000 gods and demons attacking Penglai. At first, I was thinking about informing the sect, but later I thought it would be better not to say anything, as it would be easier to expose myself. Now that he has transformed into a Dongliu, after being hinted by Witch Jin King Mount Watai, Luoyan roughly guessed that the 6 parts of the demon sect were indeed planning to attack the 3 pure ones of the orthodox sect, and the overall strategy was likely to be openly attacking Shushan and secretly attacking Penglai. The Dragon Clan rioted, and the Locking Demon Tower was damaged. It was not until the immortal Chanmei used the Liangyi Microduster to rescue the Shushan Shanking sect from the power of Yinlong Demon. Today, the Shushan Shanking sect is like a wounded hedgehog with spikes all over its body, vigilantly watching all the wind and grass around it. As for the distant Penglai in the East China Sea, it probably has no time to take care of it. If Penglai is suddenly attacked, the only foreign aid it can rely on is Kunlun. But the Kunlun Mountains are located in the far west. By the time the monks cross the Shenzhou continent and run all the way to the East China Sea, Penglai may have finished fighting. No, we still have to observe whether there is any warning in the temple. Luoyan cleaned up the room and just went out. He saw Mishi rushing out with her head in her hands, screaming, I won't listen, I won't listen, I won't listen. My father just hates me and wants to drive me away. She went to her room in a flash, slammed the door, and locked herself inside. Elder Shiding walked into the courtyard, looked at Shilili's room, opened his mouth to speak, and sighed for a long time. Then he set his eyes on Luo Yan, subconsciously frowned, and asked, "Luo Yan, how were your studies doing recently?" Luo Yan knew that his master needed to change the subject, so he quickly asked a few questions about the formation respectfully. "This question is quite interesting." Elder Shiding stroked his beard and turned to leave. "Come with me." Luo Yan quickly followed his master's pace, but he kept silent all the way and didn't ask what happened to Miss Shi. When they arrived at the back hall of Tiangong Fang, Elder Shiding pointed to the ground and said, "Finish this formation." Luo Yan looked closely and saw an incomplete formation drawn on the ground, with a diameter of about 10 meters. In the center of the formation was a bronze tripod that was half his height, surrounded by densely packed spells. At a glance, the number seemed to have exceeded 10,000, and there were more than 10 formation flags to maintain the center of the formation. Staring at him intently, Elder Shiding smiled and asked, "Do you know where to start completing it?" "Here." Luo Yan pointed his finger, but it was under the tripod foot of the central tripod. "Why?" Elder Shiding asked. "The outer structure is complete, and the inner layer is not connected to the tripod. It should be Fian's layout." Luo Yan stretched out a finger, circulated his true energy, carved a rune in the air, and then hid it into the tripod. The rune sank into the tripod and immediately appeared under the tripod foot. In order to make room for it, the many spells that originally surrounded the central tripod all expanded outward by one character position, as if a tightly meshed gear turned a ratchet. "Very good," Elder Shiding said with satisfaction. "With your comprehension, you can be ahead of me in the art of formations. A disciple surpasses his master. This is already a very high evaluation, so much so that Luo Yan hurriedly lowered his head and said in panic, "What virtue and ability do I have?" "Don't be too modest." Elder Shiding waved his hand. He didn't know that Luo Yan was brushing up the synchronization value of his hypocritical personality. He was just very pleased with his modesty. You can understand 1,000 things after hearing one. This is your talent, but it may also be a burden to you. After all, in this world of cultivation, strength is the key to success. At this point, his voice paused for a moment, and suddenly he said with some melancholy, "Apart from the art of formations, you can't fall behind in your own cultivation. The time left for you may not be much." Luo Yan. He looked puzzled on the surface, but alarm bells were ringing in his heart. What does the time left for me is not much mean? There was a flash of lightning in his mind, all kinds of thoughts collided violently, and his thoughts were turning rapidly in his mind. Suddenly, some kind of enlightenment rose from his heart, which startled Luo Yan to half raise his head and tentatively asked, "Master, what is the situation in the temple now? Could it be that even our disciples in the foundation building stage are not immune?" Elder Shiding was stunned when he heard the words, and it took him a long time to react. He knew that the disciple must have misunderstood, so he explained with a smile, "That's not the case. It was the temple master who found me the day before yesterday and wanted his son to have a good relationship with Luli. The so-called good relationship is actually a social interaction with the meaning of blind date. The two people get along for a period of time. If both parties get along well in the future, they will become Taoist couples. If they don't get along, at least they are familiar with each other." For the master of Xuandu Temple, the Tiangong workshop headed by Elder Shiding is the main source of income for the temple, and Shilili is his only jewel in the palm. It is normal to propose such a desire to make friends. Elder Shiding has no objection. Anyway, it depends on who Shilili likes in the end. Unexpectedly, when she told Shilili about it, the young lady immediately misunderstood and thought that her father wanted to marry her off to someone else in order to curry favor with the master of Xuandu Temple, so the previous scene happened. Luo Yan was also a little dumbfounded when he heard Elder Shiding's depressed words. He had certainly seen how strong Miss Shi's imagination was, especially outrageous when it came to love. According to Luo Yan's long-term observation and in-depth analysis, Miss Shi was actually a typical love phobia. On the one hand, she had excessive longing and fantasy for love, such as forming the Chain Time Society and imagining all kinds of good qualities for Qiu Chain Taiyan. On the other hand, she was repelled and afraid of really getting involved in feelings. Whether it was Elder Shiding or other senior brothers and sisters, as long as they asked her similar questions, she would always change the subject and avoid answering. Even Elder Shiding asked her if she liked Qiu Chain Taiyan from cunning, but was directly denied by Miss Shi. As a bystander, Luo Yan actually saw it very clearly. What Miss Shi likes now is an ideal man that she has portrayed with her developed imagination, a man who does not exist at all. This is the Mary Sue view of mate selection that many girls have in their childhood. Because they do not understand or even fear feelings, they will create an ideal opposite sex, and then desperately pile all kinds of positive buffs on the other person to relieve their worries and anxieties. It can only be said that such a Mishi has not developed a sound personality at all, and it is not suitable to arrange a blind date for her. This is naturally not suitable to say to Welder Shidin, so Luo Yang could only remind her tactfully. The reason why senior sister is so sensitive in this regard may be because she is not mentally prepared. Master can be more patient with her. Well, I naturally know that. Elder Shiding stroked his beard, and his eyes towards his disciple became kind. Luo Yan. Disciple is here. Actually, if I were to choose, Elder Shiding said meaningfully, I still hope for a young junior with trustworthy character and who can tolerate her little temper, and who can take good care of her in the future, to be Lily's future Taoist partner. You might as well just report your disciple's sect number. Luo Yan secretly complained in his heart, lowered his head and said, Indeed, but it depends on what senior sister Lily wants. Of course. Elder Shiding said slowly, but she is only at the marrow cleansing stage now, and her realm is low, so she has to stay in the Tiangong workshop. When she continues to transform the palace and form the elixir, I won't be able to keep her in the temple. At the time, she will go out and travel the world, and will also meet all kinds of cultivators, and she may even meet bad people. Luo Yan, although you are kind and honest, you are not stupid. You should understand what the master means. After a short silence, Luo Yan pretended to be just right and thoughtful, lowered his head and said, Disciple understands. Master wants me to seize the time and win Mishi's heart as soon as possible before she forms the elixir. How could I not understand? However, Mishi's mental age in this regard is not even an adult. Doesn't this count as corporate fining? Chapter 156a. Rare opportunity in 1,000 years has come again. After completing the formation in the back hall of Tiangong workshop, Luo Yan said goodbye to Elder Shiding and left. In the process of completing the formation, Elder Shiding also taught a lot of advanced knowledge of the formation. Even with Luo Yan's current knowledge, he felt enlightened and benefited a lot. However, Luo Yan still felt a little tricky about Elder Shiding's request. If he was not a sect spy, it would be a good choice to capture Mishi. At least he would not have to worry about the resources for cultivation. However, considering his true identity and purpose, Luo Yan did not want to harm Mishi out of some simple moral concepts. Of course, when the Zhu family proposed that he and junior sisters Yu become Taoist couples, he originally thought so. It was not because Qiu Chang Time gave in the end because he had no other choice. In short, it is better to serve Mishi first, but don't take the initiative to pursue her, just let it go. Luo Yan made up his mind, while the Kunlun mirror in the sea of consciousness watched coldly without any comments. After leaving the back hall of Tiangong Fang and returning to the accommodation area, Luo Yan was grabbed by the arm by Mishi who rushed over from that corner. Did your father just look for you? She asked excitedly. What did he say to you? Just now, Master asked me what I didn't know, and I told him a few questions about the formation, mainly. Luo Yan was about to say what the specific questions were, but she literally grabbed his arm and shook it violently. Then what? Then he took me to the back hall. Luo Yan said slowly. What did he say in the back hall? Shilui asked anxiously. Let me complete a formation. Shilui immediately glared, as if she wanted to bite her junior brother to death, and said fiercely, If you keep teasing me, I'll see if I will pay attention to you in the future. What exactly do you want to ask, senior sister? Luo Yan asked with a wry smile. That's it. Shilui was a little uncomfortable, his eyes wandering. It's about making good connections. Oh, this. Luo Yan nodded and said, I suggested to Master that he should not rush things and give senior sister a little more patience. Junior brother, you are so nice. Shilui was immediately delighted, and was about to smile, but suddenly realized something and glared. No. Why would he tell you this? This has nothing to do with you. Why is senior sister asking me this again? Luo Yan asked back calmly. Because. Shilui was stunned for a moment, then said uncertainly, because I think that since my father thinks highly of you, maybe he will tell you something. Yes. Luo Yan immediately agreed. I think it's because Master thinks highly of me, so he would chat with me about some of the problems he encounters in his daily life. Really? Shilui said suspiciously. Of course, even senior sister subconsciously thinks so. Doesn't it further prove the problem? What you said is not without reason. She still felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. Luo Yan, watching the hypocritical personality synchronization value that almost filled the screen rise, showed a sincere smile of victory, and said, Senior sister, sometimes you are indeed too sensitive. Shirley was still wondering what was wrong, but after being provoked by him, she immediately glared again. Why am I sensitive? If I didn't make such an exaggerated fuss, I would have been dragged into marriage by my father, okay? No. Luo Yan said patiently. Master regards senior sister as the apple of his eye. How could he force senior sister to become a Taoist partner with someone he doesn't like? You don't understand. Shirley waved his hand sadly. It is because my father dotes on me that he insists on imposing on me the way he thinks is good for me. Hearing this, Luo Yan could only roll his eyes silently in his heart. To be fair, it's not that Elder Shiding's education method is wrong, but that Mishi's thinking is too jumpy, and any father can't stand it. Of course, it's impossible to say this in front of Mishi. Luo Yan can only act embarrassed and helpless, saying, Indeed, Master is sometimes too concerned and confused, but ignores your feelings, senior sister. That's what I mean. Shirley suddenly seemed to have found a confidant, and pulled Luo Yan to complain. After finally listening to Mishi's memories of the bitterness and sweetness, and exchanging revolutionary feelings and friendship, Luo Yan was able to get out of it. This Shirley, being innocent and naive is one thing, and being willful and childish is another. Elder Shiding asked me to chase her, just like coaxing a child, so let's take a long-term view on this matter. Of course, such a Mishi also has an advantage, that is, she is very fast in brushing the synchronization value, and the efficiency is about 4 or 5 times that of Elder Shiding. As long as the synchronization value of the hypocritical persona is up, the talent of high comprehension bonus can be maintained, and learning the knowledge of the formation will be particularly fast. As for the purpose of the formation, it has been fully reflected in Wei Dongliu. Without the ability to set up the formation, the Wanfei Tongshuan Gate would have no protection and it would be easy for malicious outsiders to infiltrate such as a witch. Of course, in addition to the formation for his own use, Luo Yan often serves as the formation master of Tiangong Fang, and travels to the major caves in the East China Sea to help set up the formation and maintain it. If not for this, Wei Dongliu would not have been able to save up a rich fortune of 150 top-grade spirit stones. Unfortunately, in order to buy the Wangyi Shijing sword, the savings have been used up, and it is urgent to replenish the economy again. So in the past few days, Luo Yan began to study hard, work diligently, and accumulate the operating funds of the Wanfei Tongshuan Gate. One day, just after returning from maintaining the formation outside, Luo Yan was suddenly called to the back hall of Tiangong Fan by Elder Shiding. When he arrived at the back hall, he saw Elder Shiding explaining things to Ling Dushu. This time when you go to the Sanu treasure ship, you must protect your junior brothers and sisters. Disciple knows. Luo Yan, you came just in time. Elder Shiding saw Luo Yan arrive and waved to him. The Sanu treasure ship was found in the waters near Kawile Island in the south. Sanu treasure ship. Luo Yan was also surprised. It was actually the Sanu treasure ship. Isn't that a secret place that is hard to come by in 1,000 years? The so-called Sanu treasure ship is a mysterious 3-masted ship, but it is unknown which immortal built it. Anyway, it was built before the Ninjiri sects. It appears and disappears in the East China Sea and the South China Sea, and the cycle of each appearance is counted in thousands of years. There are all kinds of monsters, mechanisms, and array protections inside it, and of course there are all kinds of fairy lands and treasures, which can benefit the monks who go in to explore. Of course, since the treasure ship has not appeared many times in the world, there is no record of it in ancient books, resulting in the fact that the exploration of the major caves in the East China Sea and the South China Sea is not high, and the risk is much greater than that of the East China Sea Palace. But Luo Yan and Shirley had to go, because there was not only a secret realm that could speed up the marrow cleansing, but also various rare treasures that could save time for the hard training in the Transformation Palace. If they missed this time, they would have to wait at least another 1,000 years for the next time. Chapter 157. Sanu Treasure Ship, Random Route. Since the Sanu Treasure Ship would stay for a maximum of 3 days each time it appeared before leaving again, everyone in the Tiangong workshop set off immediately. Considering the various harvests in the treasure ship secret realm, from the foundation establishment realm to the nascent soul realm, the entire workshop can be said to be out in full force this time. Not only did the second senior sister Lady Kyan, the third senior sister Liang Drulhu, and the fourth senior brother Xuanxi participate in the trial, but even the master, Elder Shiding, had to go there in person to search for benefits in the secret realm. Since the eldest senior brother Ling Shu has already reached the great perfection of the Golden Core Realm and is still some time away from forming a nascent soul, the treasures of the adventures in the Sanu treasure ship are not of great value to him. Therefore, he will bring Luo Yan and Shi, who were at the marrow washing stage, with him this time and protect their safety throughout the journey. After all, the Sanu treasure ship is not as harmless as the Ligong secret realm, and Elder Shiding has only one daughter. If something goes wrong, everyone in the Tiangong workshop will definitely not be able to accept it. Luo Yan was also relieved. Since the eldest senior brother is protecting me throughout the journey, can't I just do nothing? Not only that, it seems that with the help of this adventure, he can naturally break through the Shixie stage and enter the Wafu stage in front of everyone in Tiangong workshop. It's really wonderful. Inside the ship, Elder Shiding was telling everyone about the many rules of the Sanu treasure ship. After getting on board, you will enter an independent secret ocean realm. You will be randomly teleported to the deck of a ship in the secret sea area, and you can manipulate the ship to reach nearby islands. The secret realm of the Sanu treasure ship will only be open for 3 days. After 3 days, you must be on the ship to return. You must not miss the time, otherwise you will be trapped in the secret realm and unable to get out. The location distribution of the islands seems to be fixed, but there are too many of them. According to the records of Yu King Temple, it is conservatively estimated that less than 10% has been explored. He took out an atlas from his sleeve. Here are all the records of the exploration of the secret realm of the Sanu treasure ship by the seniors in the temple in the past. Luo Yan, you have a good memory. Write down these atlases, and when you went to the secret realm later, they will guide your senior brother. Okay. Luo Yan took the atlas and quickly turned the pages one by one, letting the Kunlun mirror record all the contents. Shi sat on the chair next to him and shook her legs. She didn't look nervous at all, but was eager to try. However, the eldest brother Ling Yushu looked solemn and asked in a low voice, "Teacher, can the direction and route of this ship be controlled?" "Yes, there is a steering wheel behind the deck, which can control the direction, but not the speed." Elder Shiding sighed and said, "But that sea area is very large and vast, and most of it has never been explored. Only in very rare cases can you be lucky enough to encounter an explored island, so you can follow the route on the map." "Huh," Shi said immediately, "then if you encounter only unfamiliar islands, wouldn't it be, yes?" Elder Shiding said with a wry smile, "In this case, what you can gain is completely up to fate." Luo Yan listened silently and flicked through the map quickly. "I saw that in the map that only recorded 10% of the island information, there were more than 7,000 records. Among them, there were only 3 islands that were actually marked as perfecting the efficacy of the Jade Mansion. Considering that Mishu must have her marrow cleansing first, it would be best to choose the one closest to the 3 perfect Jade Mansion's islands among all the islands marked with promote the marrow cleansing rate. After the marrow cleansing is completed, go to the Jade Mansion as soon as possible. But the problem is that the secret realm is only open for 3 days in total. How many islands can be explored in these 3 days? Including the sailing time, it is estimated that the number that can be explored is extremely limited. In addition, 90% of the islands in the secret realm are unfamiliar islands that have not been explored. In addition to the islands, there are dangers that you need to be careful about." Elder Shiding continued to remind him, that is, the other cultivators you encounter in the secret realm. The Sanu treasure ship is different from the Ligong secret realm. It is not limited to the Yu King Temple disciples to enter. Therefore, there will be independent cultivators from other sects and even murderous demon sect cultivators entering. And because the treasure ship secret realm contains all kinds of harvests from the Foundation Establishment realm, the Golden Core realm, and the Nascent Soul realm, there is a great danger of encountering unfamiliar cultivators. The safest way, of course, is to avoid contact with any ships as much as possible. After discovering them on the sea, avoid them as soon as possible. When you arrive at the island, you also need to conduct long-distance reconnaissance and confirmation before landing. If you find traces of fighting on the island, you must judge the other party's realm before deciding whether to go to the island. Decide plunder stance. Ling Yushu said seriously. If only Luo Yan and Liu Li were allowed to go, the master would definitely not be at ease. Elder Shiding sighed and said, "Tu, you have enough experience and knowledge, their safety this time is in your hands. I will definitely live up to the master's trust and bring my junior brothers and sisters back safely." Ling Yushu immediately solemnly guaranteed. Shi is the master's only daughter, and Luo Yan is a formation genius in Tiangong workshop. If these two encounter an accident in the secret realm, it will definitely be a serious blow to Tiangong workshop. Ling Yushu knew the pros and cons, so he continued to discuss various emergencies with Elder Shiding, as if he was going to take out 120,000 points of energy to deal with them. The other brothers and sisters adjusted their states in the cabin. Shili was a little restless, so he ran to the deck outside to observe whether there were any traces of the Sanu treasure ship in front. Luoyang continued to calmly and quickly record all the island information and part of the map in the entire atlas into the Kunlun mirror. Finally, the sailing warship suddenly stopped. Everyone quickly walked onto the deck and saw the outline of a three-masted ship looming on the sea at the end of the vast sea. The huge mast stood tall, and the straight top pierced the sky, just like three peaks. This is how the three-island treasure ship got its name. Elder Shiding raised his right arm, made a virtual gesture towards the three-island treasure ship in the distance, and said, "The entrance is here." After saying that, he took a step forward and suddenly disappeared on the deck. Luoyang was shocked when he saw this from behind, and he knew why his master had said before that the three-island treasure ship's secret realm could not prohibit other cultivators from entering. It was probably because the way to enter the secret realm was to get close to the three-island treasure ship for a distance, and then you would be automatically pulled into the secret realm. From here to the three-island treasure ship at the end of the water and sky in the distance, the radius of this area is too large, and Penglayu King Temple could not block such a large boundary at all. As long as any cultivator approaches the Sanu treasure ship from other directions, they can also be teleported into the secret realm, and there may be demon sect union cultivators who are hostile to the orthodox religion. When Luoyang thought about this, he saw that his senior brothers and sisters had already stepped forward and entered the secret realm of the Sanu treasure ship. Only the eldest brother Ling Yushu was still patiently explaining things to Miss Shi. "In short, you must listen to my arrangements in there, and you must not run around." I know. Shili said impatiently, "Eldest brother, you are more nagging than my father. Can we go in?" "Yes." Ling Yushu nodded solemnly, and then looked at Luoyang. Luoyang did not answer immediately, but called in his sea of consciousness. "A Jing." "What for?" Kunlun Mirror asked. "Help me save a file here and record the time and space coordinates," Luoyang said. Chapter 158 Mysterious Sea. Luoyang led the way. The secret realm of the Sanu treasure ship is an endless ocean with no end in sight. Compared to the outside ocean, this secret realm seems normal, but in fact, it has many strange features. There is no sun in the sky, but it is as bright as day. There is no sea breeze around, but the ship moves without wind. Miss Shi was very happy, running around on the deck, and even took out the flying sword to fly the sword. Of course, flying the sword is prohibited in this secret realm. Ling Yushu stood at the helm of the top deck, carefully checking the steering wheel structure. Luoyang quickly looked around and calculated silently in his mind. Every time the Sanu treasure ship appears, the secret realm will only be open for 3 days. From the time the secret realm was first opened to the time Yu King Temple received the news and the Tiangong fan group arrived here, 6 hours had passed. In other words, there are still 2 days and 6 hours left to explore the secret realm. The surrounding sea area is calm, without even a basic tide and waves. Only the upper half of the island can be seen vaguely at the 2 o'clock direction of the go. It seems to be a mountain range in the center of the island. "Luoyang?" Ling Yushu gestured and asked. After comparing the shape of the mountain with the information of all the islands recorded in the Kunlun mirror, Luoyang shook his head slowly. Meaning, the island was not in the atlas. Ling Yushu's mind sank slightly, and he sighed. "Then let's go." Although there was an unfamiliar island ahead, there was no other place to go. He turned the steering wheel and adjusted the direction of the ship to point directly at the island in the distance. At the same time, he spread his spiritual sense to monitor every move in the surrounding sea. Luoyang was also observing the surroundings, but he was not as tense as his senior brother. Firstly, after all, he had the protection of the senior brother who had reached the great perfection of the golden core realm this time, and secondly, there was no Qiu Chang Tai or Ling Yunpo who appeared in front of him and said, "I came here this time to resolve your death," so he could still maintain a calm state of mind. "Hey, where is my Miss Shi?" Luoyang was shocked when he found that Shi Lili had disappeared for no reason. He rushed into the cabin below the deck and found Miss Shi kneeling on the futon, and Luoyang was relieved. "What is she doing?" "I saw that in front of the table in front of Miss Shi, 3 incense sticks were lit in the incense burner." Shi Lili put her hands together, knelt on the futon, and muttered something. Listening carefully, she prayed in a low voice, "God bless me to the next island, so that I can encounter a unique adventure that promotes marrow cleansing." Miss, if prayer is useful, it would not be the major sects that are spread all over the cultivation world, but religions, okay? Senior sister. Luoyang barely suppressed the urge to laugh, pretending to be curious and asked, "What are you doing?" Shi Lili ignored him, just prayed silently, and then said, Don't make noise, I'm practicing Qigong. Practicing Qigong. Luo Yan was stunned. I'm interfering with the luck and destiny of the next few days. Shi said lightly. Luo Yan felt that he was about to lose control of his emotions. He took half a minute to calm down and asked, then what is the principle behind your metaphysics? No, your interference with destiny. Shi thought seriously and said, it's not complicated to explain. She stood up gracefully, held the incense burner in her palm, raised her chin and said, first of all, this young lady is a person of destiny. Her. Luo Yan finally couldn't hold it anymore. What are you laughing at? Shi glared at him immediately. No, I'm not laughing. Luo Yan weakly argued a few words, then asked, what do you mean by person of destiny? It means a person loved by God, Shi said as a matter of course. Look, your senior sister is beautiful, smart, and comes from an orthodox sect. She is the daughter of an elder. Isn't this the most powerful proof? Luo Yan suddenly fell silent. It seems, speechless. If you think about it carefully, if reincarnation is considered as a kind of opening, Miss Shi's opening is indeed perfect. Among the female cultivators I know, the only one who can compare with her is probably Zhu Yinlian, who comes from the Zhu family in Tianan. But even junior sister Zhu, while enjoying the benefits of a family of immortal cultivators, has to passively accept the arrangements of the clan and is forced to be engaged to senior brother Qiu Cheng Tian, unlike Miss Shi, who has only enjoyed benefits since childhood and does not need to fulfill obligations. Seeing that he was speechless and acquiesced, Shi smiled complacently and continued. With so many favorable conditions in one body, it is enough to show that I am being watched by the destiny of heaven. As long as I pray sincerely, God will definitely hear my prayers and help me. Luo Yan sighed in his heart. Okay, as long as you are happy. Miss Shi put down the incense burner, touched the bag she was carrying, and said, Junior brother. What's wrong? Lend me a high-grade spiritual stone, and I'll return it to you after we leave the secret realm. Oh. Luo Yan took out a high-grade spiritual stone and handed it to Miss Shi. According to Luo Yan's experience, high-grade spiritual stones are considered 100,000 yuan notes in this world of cultivation. They are generally used for large-scale transactions, such as purchasing land, caves and other real estate of the sect. Apart from that, you can't buy anything in the market, because people can't make change. So it's normal that Miss Shi didn't bring it with her. Even so, Luo Yan believed that Miss Shi would be able to take out as many high-grade spiritual stones as she wanted after returning, so she was very happy to lend it to her. Shi took the spiritual stone and left the cabin and went up to the deck. Then, under Luo Yan's shocked eyes, she threw the high-grade spiritual stone into the sea. Luo Yan. This is a necessary price. Shi turned around and explained, even when throwing dice, the probability of good luck and bad luck is similar. So, if I want to realize my wish, I have to pay the corresponding price first, so that it meets the requirements of the destiny of heaven. Luo Yan was already numb after listening to it. What kind of metaphysical method is this? Too magical, right? However, seeing Miss Shi's firm and undoubted look, he began to murmur in his heart. Considering that this world is not a world that follows scientific settings, what if the destiny of heaven that Miss Shi said really exists? Wait, the way of heaven seems to really exist, right? A jing. Thinking of this, Luo Yan hurriedly called out to Kunlun Mirror in his heart, can Miss Shi's method really communicate with the destiny of heaven? What are you thinking? Kunlun Mirror was speechless and said unhappily, the destiny of heaven doesn't recognize relatives, how can it be communicated with? Besides, even if it can really communicate, it must be extremely ruthless. Want to get benefits from it? Dream on. That's right. Luo Yan patted his head, feeling that he was really bewitched by Miss Shi's erratic behavior. If the will of heaven really exists and is paying attention to Miss Shi's surroundings, I'm afraid it would kill me, the time thief who borrowed a jinn to cheat, in the first place. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 159. Solitary Island Cave, Demon Lord's Message. We're here. Ling Yushu reminded. He scanned the island ahead with his spiritual sense and confirmed that there were no signs of fighting. The probability of there being cultivators on the island was low. Luo Yan and Shi on the deck had been alert a quarter of an hour ago, and now they immediately became nervous and prepared to disembark with their senior brother. The place where the ship was moored was a concave rock cape, a natural harbor. Ling Yushu dropped the anchor, lifted the planks on the side of the deck, and connected them to the rock cape next to it. After testing the stability, he called his junior brothers and sisters to disembark together. The terrain of this island is very steep, with a height difference of about 10 meters from the sea level. From the outside, it is all cliffs. The three of them raised their respective magic weapons and flying swords, ready to deal with the enemy at any time, and walked forward cautiously. After passing through the dense jungle and killing some monsters that came to attack, everyone arrived at the central mountain range of the island, that is, the mountain that Luo Yan saw on the sea surface before. The mountain is high, about 1,000 meters high, and many places are vertical rock walls. Ling Yushu quickly explored the area and found a small path up the mountain, but there were no steps, only barely step-able footholds, and it looked like a beast had walked out. Judging from the monsters we encountered earlier, there should be no transformed monsters on this island. Ling Yushu thought for a moment and reminded, but just in case, you should stay behind me and don't walk around casually. He winked at Luo Yan, who immediately understood and asked Mishi to walk in the middle of the team, while he stayed at the rear to cover the rear. This mountain is very steep, and its steepness is even worse than that of Shushan, but the vegetation is obviously not as dense as that of Shushan. Many places have exposed bare rocks, and the surface is also bumpy, as if it has been weathered and corroded for a long time. After climbing about 2/3 of the way, a natural cave came into view. The cave was very large, about 5 meters wide and 3 meters high, and it was pitch black inside. Ling Yushu took out his magic weapon, which was a self-luminous night pearl, and let it float in. Wherever the pearl passed, the terrain became clear. The deeper they went, the narrower the cave became, and in the end, only one person could pass through. Go in and take a look. Ling Yushu said seriously, you'll listen to my instructions at any time. Once I give the order, you will immediately turn around and run away. Seeing that the eldest brother was looking at him, Luo Yan nodded seriously, knowing that the eldest brother's real meaning was actually you pull Shiluli and run. Shiluli didn't know what the two people meant by their eyes, but just held Luo Yan's left arm tightly, excited and scared. The three of them walked a distance in the narrow rock corridor. The light around them became dimmer, the temperature began to drop, and the footsteps gradually echoed. After turning a few corners, the front suddenly became wider. Everyone entered a large cave, and the temperature became cold. The cave was full of stalagmites and stalactites, and water drops fell from top to bottom, making a long echo in the quiet cave. There seems to be words on the wall, Shiluli suddenly said. Ling Yushu shone the beads over and saw that on the relatively flat wall, there were indeed several lines of large characters engraved, and they were ancient seal characters. If it were other cultivators, they would probably be at a loss for translation. However, King Temple has integrated the works of various schools of thought, and ancient seal characters are also one of the compulsory courses, so it is not difficult for everyone to read. It was written on it. This is the true Lord Suani, who mistakenly entered the Netherworld Sea for 2,000 years and could not get out. He discovered a natural cave on this island. In order to protect the orthodoxy, he engraved the characters here and passed down the true method of body forging of my Suani clan, smoke swallowing and gold jewel. If the later ones are demons, they can choose to learn according to the distance of blood relationship with our clan, and the human race will retreat voluntarily. There are many diagrams carved on the bottom, which are a long-haired cat, stretching its back and limbs, and posing various strange breathing postures. There are countless acupuncture points and key circulation routes on the big cat's body, with various prompts marked next to them, such as the demonic energy here turns again and you need to accumulate strength to punch the acupuncture points here, etc. Densely packed, almost filling the entire stone wall, leaving no blank space. Ling Yushu. Luo Yan. Shiluli. No, adventures are adventures. What do you mean by only for the demon clan? Now the demon clan has rolled away to the Donghuan demon realm, okay? What a coincidence. Ling Yushu said with a smile, adventures are adventures, but they are prepared for the demon clan, and we can't use them. The true method of body forging on the human side has been lost even in the heyday of the ancient Chanji, and it must be traced back to ancient times. If the human race can practice it, Ling Yushu would also like to learn it and improve his physical quality. However, Luo Yan did not give up, and asked Kunlin in his sea of consciousness. Jin, I really can't learn this thing. Do you have any template of Suanini bloodline that can allow me to obtain Suanini talent and learn this bodybuilding method? People pour vinegar to eat dumplings. You saw a plate of vinegar and asked me if I had dumplings, right? Kunlin said with a smile, of course not. and to use mirror flowers and water moon to disguise as a demon race, you must have the essence and blood of the corresponding race. The difference between human bodies and demon races is too great. Without the corresponding essence and blood, mirror flowers and water moon cannot make up for the difference. Of course, the most important thing is that I don't have the bloodline of talent of Suhan and I. This kind of monster beast prefers quietness rather than movement. Unless you specifically come to look for it, it is difficult to encounter it in the outside world. TSK. Luoyan said regretfully, there are things in this world that a Jin can't do. It seems that I overestimated you. Are you asking for a fight? Kumlin Jin laughed angrily, if you say another word, I will take away your mirror flowers and water moon. A Jin, stop it. I take back what I said just now. Luoyan was arguing with Kumlin Jin over there, and Ling Yushu said, it seems that this ancient demon has a deep sectarianism and will not leave us anything useful on the island. Let's go. Let's see. Shili still didn't believe it. How could my metaphysics fail? I also sacrificed a piece of top-grade spiritual stone. Bastard Tiandao, give me my money back. At least check this place out, she groped in the dark unwillingly. Hey, look, isn't there a cave here? Ling Yushu shone the night pearl over, and saw that behind the rock forest, there was indeed another shorter cave, about 1 meter high, and an adult needed to bend down to enter. This cave doesn't look like it can be passed. Before he finished speaking, Shili had already crouched and crawled in, frightening Ling Yushu and Luoyan to death. What if Miss Shi got into trouble in there? Wouldn't Elder Shiding peel our skins after we get out? The two of them hurriedly shouted stop, then bent down and went into the cave, only to hear Shili in front of them suddenly clapping his hands and laughing. Big brother, little brother, come and see. Chapter 160. Dragon's 100 Forms, Secret Technique of Bodybuilding. Ling Yushu and Luoyan passed through the narrow corridor and came to the second cave. There was also a flat rock wall here. Shili had already taken out a palace lantern magic weapon and hung it in the air, illuminating the words on the rock wall. The words outside are all written by the big cat. There is no room for writing, so I write here. What is smoke swallowing and gold sparkling art? Bullshit, don't even learn it. The components of demonic energy are turbid air. If you walk around the body according to that method, every time you walk, more turbid air will remain. You will suffer when you form a baby. It is better to learn Longkia Baying Song from my Wuchan family, the strongest bodybuilding secret technique of the human race, and the demon race does not need to learn it. Below is a naked man doing various weird movements, and various acupuncture points, key circulation routes and notes are also marked. Ling Yushu. Luoyan. Shiluli. So you two are leaving messages here to fight? Huh. Ling Yushu suddenly said in surprise, this technique seems to have a miraculous effect on marrow washing. Luoyan was shocked when he heard this, and hurriedly looked in the direction pointed by his senior brother. He saw that the key circulation route of the technique indeed passed through the most difficult dead corners of the marrow cavity in the marrow washing stage, and there were also annotations by the old man of the Wuchan family next to it. There is a condyle hole in the occipital bone behind that brain. Here you should circulate Qi for a small cycle, and inject it from the outer side of the brain after 3 times. There are holes in the spine, which become wider from top to bottom, so you should circulate Qi from bottom to top. Luoyan read it carefully and found that the bodybuilding secret technique written on the wall was much more detailed than the Qi circulation route of the breathing technique. No, it can't be said that way. After all, the Taoist Qi refining technique is designed to facilitate breathing and strengthen the Qi, so the Qi circulation only travels through the major meridians. The bodybuilding secret technique is to remove turbid Qi and nourish the body, so the Qi circulation will pass through various muscles and bones, as well as many side details. In terms of improving the realm of cultivation, Qi refining technique is definitely still necessary. But in the stage of marrow cleansing alone, the efficiency of the body refining technique is even better. To be precise, it is directly more efficient than the Qi refining technique. Ling Yushu was still amazed and said in admiration, I have heard that the body refining technique of the ancient witch clan is on par with the Taoist Qi refining technique. Now it seems that it is indeed mysterious, profound and unique. It's a pity that the more you practice the body refining technique, the more difficult it is to advance. If not for this, the Taoist tradition would not have ended up being extinct, but I didn't bring the recording jade slips this time. Junior brother, you have a good memory, can you remember all these techniques? Remembered. Luoyan had already read all the diagrams word for word and nodded. In his mind, Kingping Sword commented aloud, the Song of the 100 Forms of Dragon Qi, the secret bodybuilding technique of the Wuchan family, I didn't expect it to be here. What your senior brother said is indeed right. The problem with all the bodybuilding techniques of the clan is that the later the stage, the harder it is to improve. The Song of the 100 Forms of Dragon Ki was also the supreme bodybuilding technique among the secret ones, and it is even more difficult to practice. Starting from the Jinnan realm, the benefits of practicing it for the same amount of time are far less than those of Taoist Ki refining. But with your current cultivation level, practicing it can still improve your strength faster. Luo Yan asked uncertainly, can this bodybuilding technique be practiced together with Taoist Ki refining? Why not? King Ping Sword said with a chuckle, the origins of Taoist Ki refining and the Wu clan's bodybuilding techniques are much deeper than you know. The Wu clan's bodybuilding technique aims at the cultivation of the entire body, and the Taoist Ki refining technique just changes it to focus on the dantian. There is not much difference in the essence of Ki circulation. I agree with her on this point. Kunlun Mirror echoed, when the Taoist Ki refining technique was first practiced, the main slogan was first build the dantian J palace, then forge the limbs and bones. It was only later. King Ping Sword said with a smile, the cultivators found that even if they did not practice the physical body, they could still achieve the Tao and become immortals. The so-called slaying the three corpses means abandoning the physical body and becoming an immortal with a true spirit. Of course, the highest level that can be achieved is the realm of heavenly immortals, but after all, one has the same lifespan as the sky, so who has to pursue the physical body to become a saint? I understand. Luo Yan secretly memorized the words of the mirror and the sword. After confirming that there was no residue in the cave, Ling Yushu led his fellow apprentices out of the cave, airboarded the ship and raised anchor. In the cabin under the deck, Luo Yan looked at Chilili who was happily practicing the bodybuilding technique, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. This Miss Shi, who had a set of mysterious metaphysical rituals, actually found an adventure that could accelerate her marrow cleansing. Was she not kidding? Was she really the person of destiny? Don't be silly. Kumlin Jim couldn't help but said, from the perspective of probability, even the smallest probability can happen, so it doesn't mean anything. A Jin, you mean that Miss Shi is just lucky? Yes, what else? Kumlin Jim lamented, you actually believed her? I began to doubt your IQ. I didn't believe it completely, I just made a bold assumption. Luo Yan thought seriously, you said, if I asked her to do a ritual to ask for an adventure that can accelerate the transformation of the palace, would it be effective? You are so boring. This idea of his was mercilessly complained by Kumlun Jing. But Luo Yan did not give up, but returned to his cabin first and began to practice Longqi Baying Song. Although he had entered the transformation palace stage and did not need to accelerate the marrow washing, the bodybuilding secret technique could strengthen the body after all, and he needed to leave the impression to his senior brother that I rely on this to complete the marrow washing, so he needed to practice it. After practicing for a while, Luo Yan left the cabin and found Miss Shi. Senior sister. What? Shili opened her eyes, how is your training going? Not bad. Luo Yan said casually, Senior sister, can you talk to the Will of Heaven again, so that we can encounter the adventure of the Transformation Palace next time? It would be best if we can directly improve the Jade Palace, save time for the Transformation Palace, and improve the grade of the Golden Core. Shili frowned and said, I just asked God for help once, and you ask me for help again, how can this be possible? She turned her head to look outside the cabin, and whispered mysteriously to Luo Yan. There are two things about my method that don't work. One is that the more people know about it, the less effective it is. The other is that the more you do it before, the less effective it is. So we can neither let other people know about it, nor use it easily. Is there such a thing? Luo Yan didn't know what to say, and he held it in for a long time before saying, if that's the case, we shouldn't ask for accelerated marrow cleansing, but for accelerated transformation palace. The latter is related to the grade of the golden core. You're stupid. Miss Shi pulled his ear and said, 2 birds in the bush are worth a bird in the hand. I haven't completed the marrow cleansing yet, what's the point of speeding up the adventure in the palace? You can save it for next time. Luo Yan said anxiously, for example, if you get some elixir, don't eat it now, save it for after the marrow cleansing, isn't it better? Shili was stunned for a long time, then suddenly slapped his head. Why didn't you say it earlier? Luo Yan. Chapter 161. Don't hide anything from your senior sister. Luo Yan was still heartbroken until he left the cabin and stepped onto the deck. How did she use it? Why did she use it on the marrow cleansing stage? Even if the marrow cleansing stage is not accelerated, it only takes about 10 years. The palace transformation stage takes more than 200 years, and that's just the requirement for the 3rd grade golden elixir. Since you have such a strong ability, use it to improve the grade of the golden elixir, bastard. You don't really believe it, do you? Kunlun Mirror said helplessly. Why don't you believe it? Luoyang asked her directly. If it's fake, I won't lose anything. If it's real, the loss will be huge, okay? He gritted his teeth and said, I would rather she was playing tricks, otherwise if it happens a few more times, my blood pressure will definitely explode. You are narrow-minded. Kunlun Mirror said leisurely. Shut up, Jing. If you have the ability, go find the heaven repairing stone yourself. Luoyang chatted with his senior brother Lemushu, who was at the helm, on the deck for a while. Seeing that there was still no trace of an island in the surrounding sea, he went down the deck again. He had a new understanding of the secret realm of the three-island treasure ship. Not only was it completely random which island to go to, but even whether or not to encounter an island was random. It was too unstable. But, Luoyang suddenly remembered the words written by the true Lord Xuanli in the cave on the previous island. If you stray into the Nether Sea, you will not be able to get out for 2,000 years. Adding the Wuchangxi at the end, it can be roughly inferred that this secret realm existed as early as the ancient times when the Wu clan was active, and it was called the Nether Sea. At the time, the ancient monks who entered this secret realm did not have these ships to leave the country, so once they came in, they were trapped. So, who built the later three-island treasure ship? Luoyang stuck his head out of the side of the ship and looked at the sea below. The sea was deep and the bottom could not be seen, and there were no aquatic plants or other floating objects. The waves were indeed rising and falling, but the direction of the ocean current could not be seen clearly, and there was no sea breeze. Where did the name Nether Sea come from? Little junior brother, be careful. Ling Yushu shouted on the upper deck, if you fall in, you can't be saved. According to what Elder Shiding said before, whether you're entering or leaving this secret realm, or traveling between many islands, you must take this ship. If you accidentally fall off the ship and fall into the sea, your life will be in danger. The reason is simple. You can't fly a sword here, and the buoyancy of the seawater is surprisingly small. If you fall into the water and fail to grab the ropes and other fixed objects on the boat in time, you'll sink in the blink of an eye, and then there will be no news. Luoyang retracted his neck, frowned and walked around on the deck, feeling that this secret realm is becoming more and more unsettling. So he went downstairs to find Miss Shi. Unexpectedly, after entering the cabin, Luoyang found that she really did not continue to perform the bodybuilding secret technique at all, but lay on the bed like a dead dog. Senior sister, what's wrong with you? Luoyang rushed over and put his fingers on her neck to check the flow of true energy in her body to confirm whether she was possessed. Nothing. Shili pushed his fingers away and said weakly, the movements of the bodybuilding secret technique are too tiring to practice. Luoyang, I think the cultivation world should legislate in the future, and those who are under the age of 18 are not allowed to practice immortality. Why is marrow washing more tiring than breathing and refining ki? Shili held her chin with both hands and pressed the pillow, her black hair spread out on the bed like a waterfall. Her two slender legs were bent and raised, revealing white silk stockings, swaying back and forth mischievously. She suddenly turned her head and asked, Junior brother, do you think there is a way to wash the marrow directly without practicing every day like this? I think there should be. Luoyang said ambiguously. Of course there is, the blood pool of the Shushan Demon Refining Tower, the pure Yuan Qui pill in the Kunlun West Queen Mother secret realm, you can't get it. Well, wait, because Qiu Chang's Han washed his marrow in the blood pool in advance, the pure Yuan Qui pill was saved. Junior sister's Yu has her own weight, and senior sister An has already reached the Watcher level. These two are useless. Can we find an opportunity to give it to Miss Shi? No, we can't give it directly. We have to get some benefits from her. Luoyang was thinking about it, and suddenly came to his senses. He saw that Shilili's pretty face was very close to him, and she was about to kiss him if she got any closer. What are you thinking about? She widened her eyes. Are you hiding something from me? Do you have to be so sensitive? Luoyang quickly restrained his emotions and said with a dry laugh. How could it be? Senior sister, don't make groundless guesses. Really? Shilili straightened up again and folded her arms. Luoyang secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but found that the Kunlun mirror did not indicate that the synchronization value had increased, and he was slightly startled. Then he noticed the way Shilili looked at him, and immediately realized that the other party had not been fooled by him. Speaking of which, Shilili crossed his arms and said to himself, if there is a faster way to wash the marrow directly, I'm sure that junior brother will tell me on his own initiative, right? That's for sure. Luo Yan immediately expressed his loyalty. If there is a similar adventure, I probably can't handle it myself, and I will definitely report it to Master. That's true. Shi Li nodded. However, the synchronization value still did not increase, indicating that Miss Shi did not believe his nonsense at all. Well, just now the senior brother asked me for something, I'll go up and reply to him first. Luo Yan felt more and more that something was wrong, and quickly found an excuse to slip away. When he left the cabin and closed the door, Shi Li showed an angry expression. Just now, I asked Junior Brother if there was a way to wash the marrow directly. Junior Brother first forced a smile and said maybe there is, and then he began to be stunned and silent. It was obvious that there was a way, but he was just hesitating whether to tell me. Thinking of this, she was so angry that she gritted her teeth, thinking, Luo Yan, I am so good to you at ordinary times, but you are still hiding things from me? Who led you into Tiangong workshop in the first place? Forget it. An ungrateful stinky man. Thinking of this, Shi Li was sulking for a while, and finally had to accept the current facts. Even if the junior brother was hiding it, he couldn't force him to say it. Hard means can't work, it seems that only soft means can be used. Thinking of this, Shi Li raised her eyebrows and looked at herself in the bronze mirror. Not bad, with delicate looks and charming temperament. What kind of man can resist the coquetry of this beauty? No one. Thinking of this, Shi Li tidied her clothes and then showed a flower-like smile. She stood up, pushed open the cabin door, and walked towards the top of the deck. In the past, Miss Shi had 3 unique skills to get what she wanted. The first is the money tactic, using a large amount of spirit stones to knock the opponent unconscious, which can solve most of the problems. The second is the coquetry tactic, which has only been used on her father so far. As long as she acts like a spoiled child, Elder Shiding will most likely obey her in everything. If she doesn't, she will turn to crying out of grievance, and Elder Shiding often can't stand this trick, so he will go to negotiate with the other party. Since the other party doesn't accept spiritual stones, he can only exchange for more valuable things, such as the face of Elder Shiding, the casting of Lulontu in Pengliu King Temple, or the custom-made magic tools of Tiangong Workshop. The third is the metaphysical tactics, which are used on things that Elder Shiding can't handle. Of course, Luo Yan is his junior brother, so there is no need to use such violent means as metaphysics. Let him try the power of acting like a spoiled child first. Chapter 162 Shi Li's Super Combo. On the deck, Luo Yan was chatting with his senior brother Ling Shu about the secret art of bodybuilding. The secret art of bodybuilding was lost in ancient times when the clan's Taoist tradition was cut off. Now there are only some martial arts secrets left, but only the superficial knowledge. Ling Shu commented, when you were in the marrow washing stage, don't follow that key refining technique to circulate ki, but follow the secret art of bodybuilding to circulate ki. The efficiency of marrow washing can be greatly improved. After the marrow washing, you can also spend a quarter of an hour every day to practice, which has the effect of strengthening the body. But if you spend more time, it will delay your own practice. Big brother means that the efficiency of this secret art of bodybuilding for improving cultivation is far less than that of Taoist key refining technique, right? Luo Yan thought to himself that what this big brother said was consistent with what Jing and Jian said. The biggest problem with the secret art of bodybuilding is that it takes too long to take effect. The later the cultivation is, the slower the speed of improvement is, which is far less than Taoist key refining technique. Luo Yan even hit some speculation that there might be some key drugs and rituals to assist with the secret art of bodybuilding. It was only because of some reasons that these key factors were unfortunately lost, which led to the elimination of the bodybuilding secrets due to low efficiency. Of course, looking at the history of the entire cultivation world, it is a long process of going from strong to weak. I don't know how many Taoist traditions have been lost in the long river of time, yes. Kunlun Mirror also sighed. In fact, the Taoist techniques are only the least damaged part. From ancient times, to the Middle Ages, to modern times, and then to today. Every once in a while, the distribution of spiritual energy in the cultivation world will undergo earth-shaking changes. How long have these peerless cultivation talents, such as the clear heart of Taoism and the natural sword bones, not appeared? This is not just a matter of probability, the probability itself is shrinking. At this point, Kunlun Mirror suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Keep talking. Luo Yan said strangely. No, nothing. Kunlun Mirror was silent. So you let it slip? Luo Yan laughed. At this stage, you accidentally told me a secret that you shouldn't have told me. No. Come, Lin Jing said lightly, now is not the time to talk about this topic. Look who is looking for you. Luo Yan turned his head in astonishment, and saw Shi Lili walking towards him with a smile. This young lady is already delicate and beautiful, and she is even more beautiful when she smiles. But for some reason, whether it is Luo Yan who is close to her or the eldest brother Ling Yushu who is standing on the helm, they all suddenly feel a chill in their hearts. Her smile is so strange. It's not that Miss Shi Lili can't laugh, but she has always been a person who can't hide her thoughts. Even when she laughs, it is a smile from the heart. When will she show such a polite and courteous smile that is clearly asking for help? Ling Yushu shuddered, and immediately turned around and leaned on the side of the boat, pretending to look into the distance in a trance. Luo Yan was about to take a step and leave, but Miss Shi grabbed his arm and stopped him. Little junior brother, she smiled sweetly, come with me, I have something to tell you. Luo Yan was shaking all over after hearing such a delicate word. He had no strength to resist and was dragged to the deck by her. Ling Yushu. He turned around with a complicated expression, wondering if Master had known about little junior brother and little junior sister for a long time. When did Master plan to get them engaged and become Taoist couples? And did he plan to have offspring? What would be more appropriate for the gift money and the full moon money? Luo Yan was pulled into the cabin by Miss Shi. Just as he was about to speak, Shi Lili locked the cabin door with his backhand. Luo Yan. Miss Shi, you want to take away my Yuan Yang? No way. Why are you holding my pants? Shi Lili frowned and said. Nothing. Luo Yan calmed down, loosened his hand that was holding his belt, and rubbed his dumbfounded face. What do you want to talk to me about, senior sister? If there is nothing, can't I come to you? Shi Lili said with a smile, it is my duty to care about my junior brother. Thank you for your concern, senior sister. For some reason, Luo Yan felt like a bug falling into honey when he heard her speak in such a sweet tone, with a sweet feeling of being drowned. How is your bodybuilding secret technique going? Shi Lili said with a smile, are there any difficulties that I need to guide you? Luo Yan was speechless for a moment. You ask me, a cultivator of the water level, what questions do I have to ask you, a cultivator of the Shixi level? Of course, he is a professional spy after all, so he will not be stumped by such a request. After complaining in his heart for a while, Luo Yan quickly turned his thoughts and found a question he encountered when he washed his marrow and asked her. Yes, sister, I do have a question. Why is it that every time that he circulates around the body and goes up the spine, it will stop at the second heavenly gate from the top down? Shi Lili's smile froze on her face. Listen carefully. After a moment of silence, Miss Shi coughed and said calmly, that's because, when the key circulates around the body and goes up the spine, it will get stuck at the second heavenly gate. It's because that's the second heavenly gate, do you understand? Luo Yan. If I ascend to the Sky Throne one day, I must formulate the Miners' Cultivation Protection Law to prohibit big kids with immature psychological age from becoming sisters. Well, since I answered a question for you, you owe me a favor. She pulled a chair over and sat down almost next to Luo Yan, leaning forward and asking, Junior brother, you have a simpler method for marrow washing, right? Luo Yan was strangely relieved when he heard this. Fortunately, he didn't doubt my identity, nor did he covet my body, he just wanted to get the secret method of marrow washing from me. Seeing that Luo Yan didn't deny it at the first time, Shi Lili could see that this junior brother did have the secret method of marrow washing. She immediately hugged his arm and shook it, saying tenderly, Tell me. Tell me, tell me, tell me, tell me, damn, it was a combo. Luo Yan boasted that he was also a person who had experienced many ups and downs, but Miss Shi was really good at using her own advantages. She knew that her appearance was exquisite and flawless, and she was cute and lovely, so she deliberately acted like a daughter and begged softly. She knew that her personality was innocent and likable, so she deliberately acted like a child and acted like a spoiled child. If only one of these points was taken out, Luo Yan could still bear it with a heart of stone, but all of the above were interwoven into a net, a big net that could melt a man's heart, and it still made him slightly break his defense. Forget it, it's useless to keep it anyway. Senior sister, Luo Yan closed his eyes, struggling with his mind, and finally said slowly, I wanted to give it to you after I get out. I have a bottle of King Jim Yuan Kui pill. Kum Lin Jim watched his performance coldly, and then looked at the rapidly rising synchronization value, wondering if he was acting in a character setting or acting in his true colors at this time. Chapter 163. Not even giving the Titanic a chance. Miss Shi was very happy. Miss Shi was also very angry. She was happy because her junior brother really had a way to quickly cleanse the marrow. She was angry because her junior brother didn't tell her right away. Of course, this was not important. Overall, she was happier than angry. Luo Yan took out a bottle of King Jin Yuan Kui pill from his bag, put it in Shilili's hand, and said, "Take this pill once every 3 days to activate the turbid air in the dead corner of the marrow cavity and make it easier to be expelled by luck." In short, the bodybuilding secret technique still needs to be practiced every day, but with this bottle of pill, the corresponding marrow cleansing time can be shortened. Yeah. Shilili was delighted, thinking that since it could shorten the marrow cleansing time, it would be fine. Otherwise, I couldn't stand practicing for another 5 or 6 years. Then, senior sister, I won't disturb you from practicing. Seeing that Shilili didn't care about how this bottle of King Jin Yuan Kui pill came from, just like a woman wouldn't care whether her husband worked hard to make money when shopping, Luo Yan quickly withdrew and left. Go ahead, go ahead. Miss Shi let him go this time, which made Luo Yan feel a little inexplicably disappointed. It's annoying to stick to him, and it's disappointing not to stick to him, so this is how we men are. He laughed at himself in his heart and walked onto the deck. Suddenly, he heard a bang in the distance, as if thunder had descended, and almost deafened his ears. "Junior brother, go back below the deck!" Ling Yushu shouted anxiously. Luo Yan turned around and ran down without saying a word, just in time to run into Shilili, who ran out of the cabin in a hurry. "What's wrong?" she asked anxiously. "It seems that someone is fighting on the sea." Luo Yan just took a quick look and said uncertainly. As soon as the voice fell, the ship they were riding on suddenly drifted 180 degrees under Ling Yushu's violent steering. The violent rotation and shock, the huge acceleration threw Luo Yan directly out and fell on the wall of the corridor next to him. There was a sharp pain in his back. Before Luo Yan could stabilize his body, he saw Miss Shi was also thrown over and fell directly on him, attacking him from the front and back. Her mouth hit Luo Yan's lips directly, and Luo Yan almost cried out in pain. His lips were broken by his teeth, and the smell of blood with a slight rusty taste spread between his tongue and teeth. Miss Shi sat down on the ground in embarrassment, covering her mouth tightly with both hands, and her beautiful big eyes were already filled with tears. On the one hand, it was because of the pain, and on the other hand, it was shy and flustered. No matter how innocent she was, at least she understood the meaning of losing her first kiss. "Senior sister, are you okay?" Luo Yan struggled to stand up and wanted to go over to help her, but he saw Shilili was obviously panicked, and she quickly retreated to the corner of the wall with all her limbs, with tears in her eyes. "Luo Yan, don't make it seem like I'm molesting you, okay? I'm also a victim." However, for some unknown reason, the board under his feet shook violently again, as if the whole ship was lifted up by a huge wave, and then smashed back into the sea. Luo Yan felt as if he was riding a roller coaster, and it was the kind without a seat belt. In the blink of an eye, he was thrown up and down again, and rolled into a ball with Miss Shi. If it were outside the fairyland, he would not be so embarrassed if he could fly into the air with a sword. This thought flashed through his mind, and his sight suddenly shifted more than 10 meters. To be precise, it was some kind of powerful and terrifying external force that cut the whole ship in half from the outside. Luo Yan and Shilili were in the front half of the hull at this time, and they saw the torn hole of the treasure ship in front of them. Outside was the surging sea water, and the eldest brother standing on the deck of the back half of the ship with a terrified and anxious expression. "Hold on." He quickly pinched his fingers and nailed the flying sword to the lower hull, then jumped down like a wild goose and stepped steadily on the ridge of the flying sword. Then he grabbed the protruding part of the hull next to him with his right hand to stabilize himself, and pinched the sword formula with his left hand, so the flying sword shot out from under his feet again and nailed into a position further down. After a few leaps, Ling Yushu quickly fell and rushed towards the two people. However, the situation on Luo Yan's side was even less optimistic, because the front half of the hull had begun to tilt, and the breach where the two people were located was tilting towards the seawater below. A large amount of seawater began to flood in along the breach, causing Luo Yan and Shilili to quickly retrieve to the bow direction to avoid being submerged by the incoming seawater. Shilili tightly grasped Luo Yan's arm. Her pretty face was already pale with fear, and Luo Yan found that her body was shaking violently, as if she was at a loss to the extreme. Luo Yan himself was also a little frightened and panicked, but after all, he had a strong psychological quality, and was not a fairy family lady who had been pampered since childhood and whose psychological age was not yet adult. He quickly came to his senses and imitated his senior brother to pull out the Toho sword and nailed it hard into the deck under his feet to stabilize his body. Although this treasure ship looks like an ordinary wooden ship, it must have something special in it, otherwise it would not be able to carry people in and out of the nether sea, nor could it sail on the water without buoyancy. Thinking of the rumor that if you fall into the water, you'll drown in the nether sea, Luoyan immediately came to the conclusion. Even if the treasure ship is destroyed and capsized, you must hold on to the wreckage and planks until the third day. Just as he made up his mind, the ship suddenly shook violently again, so that Miss She, who was caught off guard, did not hold on tightly and was directly thrown off by the huge force and fell under the deck that was tilted more than 60 degrees. She tried in vain to grab the deck, but there was no bulge or depression on the deck for her to grab, so she could only look at Luoyan with a glimmer of hope and despair. Seeing this, Luoyan cursed in his heart, drew out the Toho sword without hesitation, and rushed down on the tilted deck at an accelerated speed, his thoughts turning like lightning. Why? If this is destined to be a dead end, why didn't the future self show up in advance? Unless I won't die next. He didn't even have time to ask Kunlun Mirror, he had already rushed to Shilili's side, leaned over and grabbed Miss She's arm. However, Shilili's fallen momentum far exceeded his expectations. Before he could nail the Toho sword into the deck again, Luoyan had been dragged into the sea by Shilili. The cold seawater poured into his robe, and he finally stacked the Toho sword forward in vain, and finally nailed it into the hull from underwater. However, probably because he was too strong, his left hand didn't hold the hilt firmly, and he was dragged into the deep sea by Shilili, who struggled helplessly. Luoyan could only watch the damaged treasure ship floating on the sea getting farther and farther away, and the rippling water light around it gradually dimmed. He tried to paddle a few times, and found that the seawater really had no buoyancy at all, so he simply exerted force with his arms and dragged Miss She, who was clinging to his arm like an octopus, into his arms. Shilili, who was still trembling, slowly calmed down in his arms, and just looked at him with lifeless eyes. "You should lose weight," Luoyan said with his mouth under the water. Shilili was stunned for a long time, and suddenly began to struggle violently again. Chapter 164 Prisoners of the Undersea Dragon Palace. In the deep sea, the two of them sank down while hugging each other. For a monk, lack of oxygen is not a problem. As long as the fasting period is over, the body can circulate internally and be self-sufficient, and does not need to exchange anything with the outside world to maintain life. But this does not mean that you can dive into the deep sea without dying, because the higher the depth, the greater the water pressure, and the monk's body will be pressed into a meat pie by the huge force. However, about 3/4 of an hour later, Luoyan was surprised to find that the surrounding water pressure did not increase at all. He thought for a moment and then came to his senses. The so-called buoyancy is essentially caused by the different water pressures above and below the object. If these seawaters do not even have buoyancy, how can there be water pressure? He fell into a long state of thinking, while Shilili in his arms closed her eyes tightly, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. She thought she was dead, so she hugged Luoyan motionlessly, waiting for the arrival of death in fear. As a result, after waiting for 3/4 of an hour, she still did not die, and finally couldn't hold her breath and opened her eyes hard. It's so dark. Diving to this depth, the visibility around was so dark that she couldn't see anything at all. She could only sense Luoyan's presence through the most basic sense of touch. However, the surrounding seawater was extremely cold, which almost paralyzed her skin, so she had to hold Luoyan tightly. Suddenly, something seemed to entangle the two of them. That thing seemed to be water grass, and it seemed to be silk. It wrapped the two of them several times from the outside, and then dragged them downwards. Luoyan tried to struggle for a while, but found that he couldn't get rid of it at all. Not only that, the true energy in his body seemed to be stagnant and couldn't function at all. After about 1/4 of an hour, light gradually appeared below. I saw that what was suspended in the abyss below was a brightly lit and magnificent palace. Crystal walls, coral trees, clam pearls as candles, and saliva smoke made the whole palace look like a fairyland, and it was like the Dragon King's palace in myths and legends, which was beautiful beyond words. The rope that bound the two people was a thin rope that looked like some kind of animal tendon instead of plant fiber. The two were dragged into the Dragon Palace, and the palace gate quietly opened, revealing a layer of glittering water film. The body passed through the water film without any hindrance, and the surroundings immediately became lighter. The cold, strange seawater that sealed the cultivation and seemed to make people breathless was all isolated outside the water film. At this time, the two people's clothes were not even wet. Shilili shivered and hugged Luoyan's arm nervously. Luoyan looked around calmly, and asked Kunlun in his sea of consciousness, "Where is my future warrior? Where is my strategy? What strategy do you want?" Kumlin Jin was puzzled. I don't see any death calamity, and I can't be staring at your future all day long. No death calamity, right? Luo Yan immediately pretended to be eager to jump. Then I will just sweep here directly. You be careful. Kumlin Jin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The so-called death calamity refers to the life and death crisis that you cannot escape without external interference. Don't act recklessly and create a death calamity out of nothing. Got it. Luo Yan breathed a sigh of relief and said gratefully, a Jin is still good to me. In other words, if I encounter a fate of 100% death, a Jin will remind me, right? HMPH. Kumlin Mirror was not fooled at all. Anyway, I'm just your tool. If I am useful, I'm a mirror. If I am useless, I'm broken mirror, HMPH. Just continue to hug your Mishi. It sank into the sea of consciousness and stopped talking. No matter how Luo Yan called it, it would not open its mouth. So the only sound in his ears was the low laughter of King Ping's sword. Luo Yan drew his attention back to reality. He saw a long corridor in front of him. The doors on both sides were closed. Only the door at the end was open. What it meant was self-evident. So Luo Yan planned to move forward to explore, but Mishi hugged his arm and stopped him from leaving. Senior sister, what's wrong with you? Luo Yan asked. She did not speak, but just shrank her neck and shook her head. Don't be afraid, senior sister. Luo Yan comforted her. Since the owner of this place brought us in safely, I think he has no intention of hurting us. She still shook her head, and it seemed that she was really scared. Come with me, be obedient. Luo Yan tried to persuade her, but it was no use, so he simply lifted her chin with his hand and pretended to kiss her on the lips. She was so scared that she hurriedly let go of his arm and stepped back like a little rabbit, then suddenly realized that she was in an unfamiliar environment full of dangers, and quickly jumped over to hug his arm again, staring with eyes and grinding silver teeth, revealing a vicious look that said, if you tease me again, I will bite you to death. Luo Yan was a little amused, but fortunately Mishi finally regained her unique spirit, so he patiently persuaded her again. Let's go, don't let others wait anxiously. She hesitated for a while, and then whispered. Is this the Dragon Palace? Not all palaces built on the sea but a Dragon Palace. Luo Yan laughed and analyzed. Look at the width of this corridor and the height of the door. It is obvious that people are active here, not some big monsters. Before he finished speaking, he heard a leisurely voice from the front. Not necessarily, after all, big monsters can transform, right? Luo Yan was silent for a moment, and then pulled Shilili forward. Just after passing through the door at the end of the corridor, he saw a handsome man in white clothes leaning on the throne in the spacious and magnificent main hall, looking over lazily. The other party's face was handsome and not like an ordinary person, with a full forehead, a high-nosed bridge, narrow eyes, and an expression on his face. It was very similar to Tu Shanjin, who had seen him in the Shushan Locking Demon Tower before. Greetings, great king. Luo Yan bowed and said hurriedly. With the experience of getting along with Tu Shanjin, Luo Yan already knew how to deal with these big monsters. The meeting should be interesting to attract the other party's attention. In the middle, you should be smart to make the other party look at you with new eyes. In the end, you should be useful, so that the other party will not be willing to kill you. Why do you call me great king? The man in white was fooled and laughed. Interesting. Others call me Shinjin or your excellency, but you call me great king? Do I look like the leader of some mountain stronghold? Not a bandit leader, but a real dragon. Luo Yan immediately took advantage of the situation. If you are not the king of destiny, how can you sit on the throne? The man in white pondered for a moment, then knocked on the armrest of the throne with his slender fingers, and continued. Sitting on the throne, does it mean you must be the king? Maybe the king is not here, so I just sit there casually. Luo Yan smiled without saying a word, showing an extremely confident expression that did not need explanation. Well. The man in white sighed and said, you are quite smart. You can actually tell that I am a dragon. Upon hearing this, Shilili couldn't help but hold Luo Yan's arm a little tighter. She only heard the man in white continue to say, however, I am not a dragon king, and this is not a palace. I'm just a prisoner imprisoned here. Chapter 165 The Cage of Eternal Life. If you have any questions, you can ask them now. May I ask, Your Majesty, where is this? You can call me Zhun Mangjin. The man in white said gently, this sea is called Dahi, and it is the end of all the water in the world. The water of the 8 directions and 9 fields, the flow of the Milky Way, flows from west to east into the East China Sea and the South China Sea, and eventually all come to this Dahi. Deep in the Dahi, this palace is called IQ. Luo Yan silently noted his words and asked again. Why did Xun Mangwajan bring us here? Of course, it was to save you. Xun Mangwajan blinked. Luo Yan. Damn, there is no way to refute. The depth of the Dadi has no end. Xun Mangwajan continued, if you continue to sink and miss IQ, you will fall into eternal sinking and cannot extricate yourself. Thank you Xun Mangwajan for saving me. Luo Yan could only bow in thanks. You're welcome. Xun Mangwajan said gently, I saved you, but I also have some selfish motives. Here comes the point. Luo Yan and Shilili immediately pricked up their ears to see what price this dragon would offer. If the Great Abyss is the end of all space, then Gaiqiu is the closest observation station to the Great Abyss. Xun Mangwajan said with a smile, I don't know who built it, but it must be earlier than the most ancient history of our dragon race. In Gaiqiu, there are many historical records left by the predecessors of the dragon race. According to the current research results, the Great Abyss itself is actually a formation. Formation? Luo Yan was shocked. Yes, formation. Xun Mangwajan said leisurely, what do you think formation is? Shilili remained silent and carefully hid behind Luo Yan. Luo Yan pondered for a moment and replied, formation is a special orderly distribution state of matter and energy. Huh. Xun Mangwajan's eyes flashed with a strange color, have you studied formations? I dare not say research, but I have studied it before. Luo Yan said modestly. That's great. Xun Mangwajan clapped his hands and laughed. After such a long time, a cultivator who understands formations has finally arrived. Human, what's your name? Shilili was about to speak when Luo Yan replying to Xun Mangwajan, my name is Luo Yan. Luo Yan, okay, Luo Yan. Xun Mangwajan nodded and wrote down the name. Luo Yan, you said that formations are a special order distribution of matter and energy. Then let me ask you, is the world we live in an order distribution of matter and energy? Luo Yan opened his mouth slightly, feeling some kind of enlightenment rising from the bottom of his heart. Why does the sun rise in the east and set in the west? Why do all things fall to the ground? Why does water turn into clouds when heated? Xun Mangwajan spread his hands and said aloud as if chanting, our world runs under a well-woven system of rules. This world is a huge formation. In other words, the formation we understand is actually learning to understand the essential mechanism of this world. The Great Abyss is one of the most important formation eyes in this world. Luo Yan listened to him patiently before asking, excuse me, but what does this have to do with the prison? Because it is located deep in the Great Abyss, the speed of time in Gaiqiu is very special. Xun Mangwajan smiled, time passes very slowly here. Here, for every year that passes in your perception, your body has actually only grown by 3 days, and only 3 days have passed in the outside world. The rate at which time passes is different. Luo Yan was stunned for a moment, then slowly reacted. Doesn't that mean, that's right? Xun Mangwajan said frankly, after discovering this feature of Gaiqiu, the Dragon Clan used this place as a prison for their exiled prisoners. A prison of time, where prisoners are almost immortal. But what is more torturous than immortality is the nearly eternal boredom and the irresistible desire to escape from this prison. He stood up and motioned for the two to follow him. The three of them walked through the main hall and came to the side hall. The side hall was full of bookshelves, like the walls of a maze, splitting the hall into pieces. The bookshelves were filled with densely packed paper-bound books, and more books were piled directly on the ground, like raised hills. Many monks stood in front of the bookshelves or piles of books, some were immersed in reading blankly, and some were writing furiously at their desks with fanatical expressions. Among them were human monks and dragon monsters. Some wore ancient clothes that had never been seen before, while others wore robes of the ancient Najiri sects. The only thing they had in common was that their expressions were particularly bewildered. They are all cultivators who fell into the Great Abyss before you and were unfortunately rescued by me and brought to Gaiqiu. Xun Mangwajan explained lightly, in the Great Abyss, there is an extremely strong sealing power. The cultivators cannot mobilize their true essence and can only sink slowly in the deep sea. But only in this Gaiqiu, the cultivators will not be subject to similar restrictions. In other words, you have to study the mechanism of this Gaiqiu. Luo Yan suddenly realized and concluded, find a way to resist the seal of the Great Abyss, so that you can escape from here. Yes. Xun Mangwajan nodded, this Gaiqiu is composed of a large formation. Before this place was used as an exile prison, many dragon ancestors mistakenly entered here and were unable to escape from the Great Abyss, so they could only study the large formation here, hoping to find a way to escape. Then, with the rise of your human race, human cultivators began to come here one after another. What you see now, all the books in this entire hall, now there are probably more than 100,000 volumes, all of which are their research experience materials. Luoyan. Shiluli. Eternal life, what a boring word. Mangujan sighed. All the cultivators who came here, at first, some indulged in pleasure, some practiced hard, and some did nothing, but in the end, all concentrated on studying the Gaiku formation. After all, once you have unlimited time, you will find that those hobbies that make you obsessed are nothing at all under the ruthless erosion of time, one day you'll get tired of it. Luoyan pretended to be sympathetic, but he didn't agree in his heart. Without mobile phones and the internet, it is naturally like this. With both, I can survive until the world is destroyed, okay? Of course, this is ultimately an unrealistic delusion, so Luoyan gently patted the trembling Mishi beside him and asked, "So, when can we start studying the Gaiku formation?" "Anytime," Mangujan said with a smile, "but I suggest that you stay here for a few days first, adapt for a period of time, and adjust your mood and state. Anyway, here, the last thing you lack is time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 166 Crying Mishi. Mangujan arranged a room for Luoyan and Shiluli. The furnishings in the room were extremely simple, with only a stone bed, a stone table and a stone bench. Fortunately, Luoyan's storage bag contained many commonly used furniture, all of which were left over from the purchases made in New King Temple to help Wei Dongliu set up the Shipping Mountain sect. At this time, he took them out one by one and carefully arranged them in the room. There were cabinets, desks, copper stoves for boiling tea and tea leaves, as well as some futons and hanging paintings. After everything was arranged, the room became much warmer. Luoyan took out a few small flags and began to arrange the defensive formation. He heard Mishi, who was sitting next to him, suddenly sobbing. "Senior sister, what's wrong with you?" Luoyan asked while arranging the formation. "Are we going to be unable to leave here forever?" Shiluli asked miserably. This, Luoyan paused for a moment and forced a smile. "It shouldn't be, then let's study the Gaiku formation first." Then Mangujan said. Shiluli said in despair, "From ancient times to the present, no cultivator has ever been able to crack the secret of the formation and successfully leave this place. Just because they can't do it doesn't mean we can't." Luoyan disagreed, turned around and quietly asked the Kunlun mirror in his sea of consciousness, "Ajin, the save file outside the secret realm before, can it be read now?" "Yes." Kunlun mirror confirmed, "But the depths of this ravine are indeed strange. If you want to teleport you out, the fairy power consumed will be far beyond the ordinary." "That's fine." Luoyan immediately seemed to have taken a reassurance pill, and his tone became relaxed. "I knew that I could trust my Ajin no matter what. By the way, Mishi, no." Kunlun mirror frowned and said, "I said before that you were a person outside this world, not in the established future of the Avenue of Time, so you can travel through time and space and change your destiny. This is why I chose you. She is from this world. Once I try to send her through time and space, I will be attacked by the Avenue of Time." "I understand," Luoyan said seriously, "so if I want to use you to leave Dahi, I can only leave Mishi here, right?" "That's it." Kunlun was a little nervous. Did he really want to abandon Shiluli here and escape by himself? To be precise, there was really no other way. After all, it was a very sad and helpless fact that Mishi could not be teleported by me. "But, even if you want to abandon her, at least try to hesitate and struggle for a while, right? Instead of making a cold-blooded and ruthless decision immediately, you will make me feel." Kunlun couldn't help but think wildly, but Luoyan did not express his opinion immediately, but said, "I see, it seems that this can only be a fallback." "Yes, it can be a fallback," Kunlun said quickly, secretly relieved. "Sister." Luoyan began to comfort Shiluli again, "Don't jump to conclusions. After all, we haven't studied the Gaiku formation yet. Don't easily assert that it will fail." Mishi didn't believe it. She just thought that she hadn't studied the more than 100,000 books in the hall thoroughly, and so many ancient cultivators hadn't been able to handle it. The probability that my junior brother and I could do it was probably very small. We might be trapped here until we die. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but break down and burst into tears. Luoyan was so anxious that he circled around her, wiping her tears, hugging her to coax her, making faces to make her laugh, and rubbing her cheeks to make her angry, but it was all useless. She just cried hard, moaning hard, and kept wiping her tears on Luoyan's clothes. Finally, Luoyan had an idea and said, "By the way, sister, you were a person of destiny. Don't you have that, metaphysics?" He was a little embarrassed to say it, after all, metaphysics was too ridiculous. But after thinking about it, as long as she believes it, the most urgent thing is to coax her first. Speaking of the person of destiny, Lily's sobbing really subsided. Luoyan struck while the iron was hot and said, "Senior sister, someone like you who is beautiful, smart, born in an orthodox sect, and the daughter of an elder, is obviously a person loved by God. How could you end up alone in such a place? Then why did God give you so many favorable conditions? This is simply unreasonable." "What you said does make sense," Lily said with sobs and began to blow her nose with a handkerchief. Seeing that she was gradually recovering, Luoyan asked her to rest in the room for a while, and he went out to get her something to eat. After activating the defensive formation of the room, Luoyan came to the main hall and found Mangjun lying on the throne. "Food." Mangjun was slightly startled, then smiled and said, "You can go to the backyard garden to find it yourself. Whether it is blood food or fruits and vegetables, even cooking utensils and spices, there is everything." "Why is that?" Luoyan immediately became interested. "Can this place still exchange what it needs with the outside world?" "Of course not," Mangjun replied, "but there are many cultivators who have fallen into this place. Even if the probability is small, there will be cultivators carrying various livestock cubs, vegetable and fruit seeds. In addition, most cultivators have already fasted and do not covet the desire for food. At first, I threw them into the garden and let them reproduce at will. In addition, the Gaiku formation is rich in spiritual power. As a result, they even flooded the garden and forced me to clean it up regularly. It would be great if you can help solve some of them." "I see." Luoyan was a little amused. "It makes sense. Except for a small number of cultivators, most of them do not eat or drink, and are used to eating wind and drinking dew. In addition, there is spiritual power in Gaiku, so it is not surprising that livestock and fruits can be raised. Alas," he sighed, "in the outside world, lifespan is limited. Which cultivator does not desire immortality? Now that I'm here and have really achieved immortality, everyone is afraid of it like a tiger. It's really strange. You only know the words, but not the meaning." Mangjun said with a smile, "The so-called immortality is just the foundation of great freedom and great ease. If you can't achieve immortality, you will have to live in fear of the end of your life. How can you be free? If you are trapped here and can't leave, it's like being imprisoned. How can you be at ease? Thank you for your advice." Luoyan first pretended to be convinced and complimented the other party a few words, and then asked tentatively as if inadvertently, "I see those senior cultivators in the side hall have been trapped here for a long time, and most of them have become crazy, but you have been here longer than them, but you don't seem to be anything unusual. You can't use my method." Mangjun said slowly. "Oh?" Luoyan was surprised. "I would like to hear the details. If I can keep my sanity for a long time, I will have more confidence in studying the Gaiku formation." "I'm a dragon," Mangjun said lightly. "The dragon race has both summer hibernation and winter hibernation. They can choose to enter a dormant state at any time to prevent their sanity from being eroded by time. If you have a way to become a dragon, you can try my method." Luoyan: "This is nonsense. How can I become a dragon?" Chapter 167. There must be something misunderstood. Luoyan came to the backyard garden. I saw that the hall here was so tall, there were countless towering trees rising from the ground, and there were weeds growing everywhere. It was more like a primeval forest than a garden that no one cared for. A rabbit came out of the grass and was not afraid of strangers when seeing Luoyan. It was still chewing something in its mouth. Luoyan looked at it for a moment and smiled slightly. At the edge of the pool, he watched the skinned rabbits, tied them with straw ropes, and then carried them back. On the way, he saw a few monks hugging each other and crying on the side of the road, shouting something like "Take me away" and "Ancestor, take me away." I don't know how long they were crazy. Luoyan sighed and thought that these monks were really miserable. The speed of time in Gaiku is very strange. It looks normal at ordinary times, but you will find that the speed is surprisingly slow when you practice. According to Mangjun, staying here for a year will only reduce your lifespan by 3 days. As for cultivation, it was almost the same. Even if one continued to breed and refine key for a year, it would only be equivalent to 3 days of cultivation in the outside world. For those cultivators who only knew how to cultivate and upgrade, and did not know how to enjoy the fun of life, it must be no less than hell. But Luo Yan thought it was okay, at least for now. He returned to the room with the rabbit and saw she kneeling on the futon, praying and performing rituals, with a sad face. "What are you holding in your hand?" She turned around and asked. "Rabbit." Luo Yan smiled and picked up the meat in his hand. "Ugh." Shili made a disgusted sound and turned his head away. "Rabbits are so cute, why did you kill them?" "I didn't kill them," Luo Yan said with a smile. "They hit themselves on the tree stump and died." "Nonsense." Shili began to cry again. "Raw meat is so disgusting, I won't eat it." Luo Yan had no choice but to silently set up the grill, light the charcoal fire, and then start to boil and grill. Shili turned her back to him angrily, thinking when had she ever suffered such injustice? In the past, even when eating meat, everyone would prepare it before giving it to her. When had she ever seen such blood? Junior brother is really something. He doesn't know how to be considerate of senior sister. As Luo Yan roasted the rabbit meat until it was shiny, the unique aroma of oil also escaped. Shili stared at the paintings on the wall and couldn't help swallowing her saliva, thinking that if the junior brother apologized now, I could forgive him. Luo Yan turned the bamboo sticks over and over again and began to brush them with red oil, so the aroma became stronger. Shili swallowed her saliva again and again. Her eyes rolled for a moment, thinking whether I should turn around and glare at him a few times, so that he would know to respect senior sister. Luo Yan began to sprinkle pepper and cumin, and the oil dripped into the charcoal fire, making a loud explosion, so Shili's gluttony was completely uncontrollable, and she turned around and snatched the bamboo sticks from his hand and ate them in big mouthfuls. "Senior sister, rabbits are so cute, how can you eat rabbits so much?" Luo Yan asked her with a smile. "Shut up. Give me the chili powder." Shili shook the can vigorously, and it all spilled on the rabbit meat. Then she bit it fiercely, as if it was Luo Yan's meat. Cough cough cough. She choked before she had taken a few bites. "Slow down, senior sister." Luo Yan immediately handed her a teacup and rubbed her back to help her breathe. She finally calmed down, but she was a little embarrassed by Luo Yan's intimate actions and twisted her body uncomfortably. "What are you going to do next?" She held the teacup, lowered her head and stared at the tea leaves in the cup, not looking at her junior brother's face. "Oh, I plan to go to the side hall first and take a look at the information of the Gaiku formation." "Do you want me to accompany you?" Shili asked in a low voice. Luo Yan was about to say no, but he saw that there seemed to be a timid pleading in Mishi's eyes. Thinking of her temper, Luo Yan understood what she meant. It was not "do you want me to accompany you?" but "can I go with you?" "Of course," he said with a smile. Too hypocritical. Kunlun Mirror first reported increase in synchronization value, and then couldn't help complaining, "You know she is timid, so why don't you coax her first? She is so scared. With your eloquence and emotional intelligence, isn't it easy to make her feel at ease?" "No need," Luo Yan said with a chuckle. "The appropriate fear of the unknown is conducive to bringing her and me closer. After all, in such an anxious situation, she can only rely on me, right? Kunlun Mirror, if you don't plan to abandon Luo Yan's identity after the sky repair is completed, I will just think you were a gentleman and won't say anything. But since you have already decided to let Luo Yan be a passerby, why do you need to leave so many traces in her heart? Scumbag." Luo Yan didn't know what Kunlun Mirror was thinking, but took Shili out of the room and went to the side hall full of books. Along the way, Shili hugged Luo Yan's arm tightly, looking around like a timid hamster. Seeing 3 strange monks on the side of the road, she immediately got behind Luo Yan. However, the 3 monks ignored them and just yelled at each other like crazy. One shouted distributed nodes are invincible and the other shouted increasing coupling is the only way out. From their expressions, both sides wanted to tear each other to pieces. The remaining monk could only yell in vain, "Don't drag others down and they are all valuable," but was directly ignored by his 2 companions. "Did you see that?" After they walked far away, Luo Yan said to Shili, "The cultivators here are all very crazy. You think 1 year here is only equal to 3 days outside? The Sanu treasure ship secret realm outside is only open every 1,000 years. This means that the group of cultivators who entered the secret realm last time and fell into the big abyss have been here in the Gaiku Palace for 100,000 years. 100,000 years? In the outside world, who can live so long except for immortals? In addition, it is impossible to practice here, and there is nothing to do. Those cultivators who don't want to escape may have committed suicide in despair. Those who can survive are all crazy people. What do you have to be afraid of? Don't talk so scary. Shirley hit him hard and said with tears in his eyes, what if we are also trapped here for 100,000 years? If I were trapped with my senior sister? Seeing that she was like a frightened bird, Luoyang deliberately said seriously, don't say 100,000 years, even if it's 1,000,000 years, I'd be willing. Shirley was angry when he heard this. He was already so uncomfortable, and his junior brother actually wanted to tease him. She was about to start grinding her teeth, preparing to bite this hateful junior brother, but unexpectedly, Kumlan Mirror suddenly removed the illusion of mirror flowers and water moons. Once this hypocritical personality was removed, the temperament immediately became extremely sincere, so that Shirley could not figure out for a moment whether the junior brother said this just to divert her attention and stop her from panicking, or to express his true feelings to her. After walking a distance, Shirley suddenly stammered, well, junior brother, I need to think about it carefully, think about it seriously, okay? Luoyan. Chapter 168. Monks can't sleep. The two came to the side hall and were shocked by the vast amount of books again. Shirley found an empty corner, took out a book from the bookshelf and read it for a while. Immediately, mosquito coils seemed to be spinning in his eyes. Luoyan also found a book and read it for a while. He felt that the author was very interesting, although a little crazy. The author claimed that the reason why the Gaiku formation was different every time it was observed was because it was actually three-dimensional, not two-dimensional. Every time the monks made an observation, they only recorded a certain section of this three-dimensional. Luoyan quickly turned to the back and found that the author was always guessing and there was no evidence to support his point of view. He immediately lost interest. It seems that there are not many really useful books among these more than 100,000 books. He came to the window at the side hall again and looked out. The Gaiku formation is a large formation set up in the central courtyard. Looking down from the top is exactly the center of Gaiku. Everyone who looked out of the side hall window could see the extremely complex and gorgeous formation on the ground, like a work of art woven with silver threads, exquisite and yet natural. What was even more strange was that the formation was constantly changing, becoming more and more complicated and difficult to describe. Do you understand it? Miss Shi's voice suddenly sounded in his ears, interrupting Luoyan's thoughts that were almost immersed in it. Well, it's quite interesting. Luoyan said perfunctorily. Liar. Shirley curled her lips and continued to stare at him. Junior brother just stared at the formation for a quarter of an hour, how could it be just interesting? She looked around carefully again and found that everyone was still doing their own things, and no one paid attention to them. Reading books is difficult to understand, and there is no entertainment around, so Shirley can only sit next to Luoyan and cast her eyes on the Gaiku formation outside the window. Luoyan came to the bookshelf and quickly searched. With the gift of understanding everything he reads, no matter which book he picks up, he can roughly know what it is about by just quickly scanning a few pages. Therefore, most of the books full of subjective guesses and conjectures were ruthlessly skipped by him. Only those array books that really have something to say will be kept in his hands and read carefully page by page. Although the speed of this careful reading is a bit fast, he stays on each page for almost 2 seconds before turning it over. The expression on Luoyan's face is extremely serious. And the monks around him did not pay any attention to him. After an unknown amount of time, Luoyan was suddenly woken up by Miss Shi again. How is it? Shirley asked. The books here are great. Luoyan said with a beaming face, there are several raid masters' hand talks, and I heard master mention it before, okay. Shirley looked around fearfully and hurriedly pushed Luoyan out. When the two passed by the main hall again, they saw Mangjan sitting on the throne, holding a piece of wood in his hand, and casually carved it into a crude treasure ship shape with a carving knife. Then he threw it outside casually, and saw the treasure ship escape from the water film, quickly becoming larger and larger, and floating quickly upwards. Luoyan. Shirley. So the Sanu treasure ship that brought us in was made by you. We have to bring more people in. Noticing the complicated looks of the two, Mangjan turned around and showed a handsome smile. Otherwise, the speed at which the monks in Gaiku commit suicide is much faster than the speed at which new people are replenished. May I ask Mangjan, why is the treasure ship not affected by the big gully and can float freely? Luoyan asked with a serious expression. I don't know why either. Mangjan said frankly, maybe it has something to do with the materials. These woods have been piled up on the Gaiku formation in the central courtyard for a long time. Maybe they're soaked with the power of the formation, so they won't sink in the great ravine like Gaiku itself. Luo Yan listened thoughtfully and asked, "Can I go to the central courtyard to see the wood? Please." Xun Mangujin said with a smile, "But be careful not to block the view of the monks behind the surrounding windows. If you block their observation of the Gaiku formation, they may be a little irritable. Of course, in Gaiku, no one is allowed to attack each other. I will stop it." "Thank you." Luo Yan bowed slightly. The two returned to the room again, and Shiluli suddenly relaxed and stretched out on the stone bed. I'm so bored." She covered her mouth and yawned. "The whole day is so hard. I finally understand why those monks are driven crazy. 100,000 years, how did they survive? If you find it boring, you can sleep in the room tomorrow," Luo Yan suggested sincerely. His tone was quite sincere, but the Kunlun mirror did not remove the illusion this time, so Mishi compared this temperament with the previous one, and immediately felt something was wrong, and said aggrievedly, "Are you complaining that I am a hindrance to you?" Luo Yan. "No, how could that be?" Seeing that Mishi was about to burst into tears again, Luo Yan could only sigh in his heart and comfort her quickly. "I feel more at ease with my senior sister by my side." "You are lying," Shiluli cried. "I'm not lying. You have been buried in the book all day and didn't even look at me. Why do I feel like a girlfriend is throwing a tantrum and making trouble, trying to attract her boyfriend's attention?" Luo Yan suppressed the strange feeling in his heart and said patiently, "Senior sister, you are worried. I have actually been looking at you all the time." "Really?" "Of course it is true, more real than true love. If you don't believe me, look at my eyes." Luo Yan opened his eyes shamelessly. Shiluli gathered her temper and looked at him fiercely for a few seconds. Suddenly, she didn't know what she remembered, and she retreated with a red face. "There's not even any bedding here. How are we going to sleep tonight?" She changed the subject. "Sleep." Luo Yan was immediately surprised when he heard it. "How come you still have the habit of sleeping, sister? Don't we cultivators just need to meditate and enter a state of concentration?" "I like to sleep, what do you care about me?" Shiluli glared at him for a few times, and then quickly frowned. "The bed I usually sleep on has several layers of bedding, which is soft. I can't sleep on such a hard stone bed at all." "But sister, I really didn't bring any bedding," Luo Yan said in embarrassment. "I can't let a Jin teleport me out, buy some and bring it back, right? Even if I don't consider the risk of exposing the secret, a Jin is afraid that you will not tolerate Mishi's unreasonable request." Shiluli also thought for a moment, and suddenly said, "Are you going to meditate to spend the whole night?" "Yes," Luo Yan said inexplicably. "Which cultivator doesn't meditate to spend the night?" "Then I'll sleep on your thighs," Shiluli said arrogantly, not giving Luo Yan a chance to refuse, and directly rested her head on his thighs. Luo Yan. "Forget it, let her be." The next morning, Mishi had a stiff neck. "I'll take a day off tomorrow, the company will have a team building, just in time to sort out my thoughts." Chapter 169. Mishi is thoughtful. It hurts. In the side hall, Mishi covered her neck with tears in her eyes. "Can I get you some ice?" Luo Yan sat next to the chair, holding the copper incense burner and a book in his hand. "It's all because your legs are too stiff," Shiluli said angrily. "Blame me, blame me." Luo Yan surrendered at the speed of light. In the whole side hall, there were probably only Luo Yan and Shiluli, sitting on cushioned chairs, wrapped in blankets and holding incense, reading comfortably. The rest of the monks had red eyes, hunched backs, and loose hair. They turned the pages of the book over and over roughly, and it seemed that they wanted to tear it to pieces. In this side hall, most of the books were observation logs about the Gaiku Great Array, and a small number were notes left by some array masters for those monks with zero foundation to learn the way of array. Luo Yan was concentrating on reading the latter. In addition, there are a few books that are diaries left by some monks who have the habit of writing, recording their life stories and the atmosphere of the times. Mishi uses them to kill time. "Junior brother," Shiluli suddenly said, "why do most of these ancient monks mention hostile sects or even enemy monks in their diaries? Logically speaking, whether a monk can finally achieve enlightenment depends only on his own practice. Why do they always shout for war and killing?" "Senior sister, what you said makes sense." Luo Yan was secretly surprised. When did Mishi start to be interested in history? He also knew how to read history and think, it's just that practicing is indeed not that simple. The so-called wealth, friends, dharma and land are all indispensable, and in essence it is a struggle for resources for practicing Taoism. On the basis of conflicts of interest, more intense hostility and confrontation will be triggered. For example, the struggle between the human race and the demon race in ancient times was because the demon race wanted to eat human flesh and blood, and the human race wanted to covet the demon's inner elixir. Another example is the struggle between the orthodox and unorthodox sects in ancient times, which was because the unorthodox sect wanted to teach without distinction and open the door to all wonders, threatening the interests of the orthodox sect. Shilly seemed to understand what he heard, but he managed to understand one thing, which is the root of all evil: conflict of interests. Look at this guy Q again. Luo Yan said earnestly, everyone is trapped here and can't get out. Time is almost infinite, and they are bored to death. At this time, the original conflict of interest is not important. The most important thing is to escape from here as soon as possible. Therefore, the human race and the demon race can keep their distance, and the monks of the Ninjiri sects can turn a blind eye to each other, and everyone can live in peace. I see. Shilly suddenly realized and asked, then if one day, your interests, little junior brother, conflict with the interests of everyone in Tiangong Fang, will you choose to betray everyone? Luo Yan was immediately shocked. Did she discover my identity as a traitor? However, soon, he saw from Shilli's expression again that she had no intention of testing or doubting at this time. In fact, she was just asking casually. This Mishi is really good at talking. Ahem. Luo Yan coughed and said sincerely, Sister, if I encounter this situation, I will definitely sacrifice my own interests to preserve the interests of everyone in Tiangong Workshop. Because Master will definitely compensate me afterwards. Shilly choked immediately, because if Luo Yan didn't say the second half of the sentence, she would definitely question whether this conflicted with the previous statement that conflict of interest determines everything. Thinking carefully, there is nothing wrong with what he said. My father really thinks highly of him. Thinking of this, Shilly blushed again and quietly hid her face behind that book. What she is reading now is a diary written by an ancient female monk. Because of the arrangement of the sect, this female monk became a Taoist partner with a senior brother whom she didn't like. Therefore, the diary is full of contradictions between the lines. On the one hand, she can't stand the personality and habits of this senior brother, but on the other hand, she has to admit that this Taoist partner identity has brought many advantages to her practice. Thinking of the last time her father proposed that she should try to get along with the son of the head of Xuandu, Shilly instinctively resisted and was irritated. If my father insisted on arranging a marriage for me, like the female monk in the diary, what should I do? Compared with this, being with my junior brother doesn't seem to be an unacceptable choice. Thinking of this, Shilly felt a little shy and uneasy, because this idea was too frivolous. How could I have such an unrestrained idea? It's all my junior brother's fault. He said that if I was trapped here, I would be willing as long as I was with him. How could I say that to my senior sister? With a pop, Luo Yan's head was hit by Shilly, who picked up a thick book and hit him lightly as if to vent. Luo Yan, read the book carefully. Shilly glared and taught him a lesson. How did I offend her? Luo Yan thought helplessly. With the characteristic of understanding everything he heard, his learning efficiency was unusually high. The books he had read had piled up into a small mountain behind him, and his understanding of the way of formations was also improving by leaps and bounds. Even in several ancient books, Luo Yan found several long-lost wonderful formations, which were extremely useful in various occasions. However, he still hadn't made any progress in cracking the Gaikyu formation. This formation was more than one level higher than any formation he had ever understood. If the formation Luo Yan had mastered was the 4 arithmetic operations, then the difficulty of the Gaikyu formation could be roughly compared to a supercomputing level problem, which made Luo Yan almost despair of having no chance of cracking it. No wonder so many cultivators in Gaikyu became insane in the end. Luo Yan sighed, closed the book and stood up. What are you doing? Miss Shi hurriedly stood up. Where are you going? I'm going to the central courtyard to see the wood used to make the Sanu treasure ship. Luo Yan replied. I'll go with you. Miss Shi had already decided to stay with him. The two left the side hall and walked in the corridor. Miss Shi summoned up her courage and asked in a low voice. Junior brother, if we are really trapped here and can't get out, what should we do? If that happens, Luo Yan pondered for a moment, the first thing to consider is how to maintain our sanity under the long time. Alas. Shilly nodded worriedly. There are only 2 days left before the closure of the Sanu treasure ship secret realm. In other words, we still have 8 months here. As for what will happen if the time limit is exceeded, it is naturally self-evident. Assuming that the secret realm will not be opened until 1,000 years later, then in the Gaikyu Palace, it will be at least 100,000 years. If it really falls into the situation, Shilly thought to himself that he didn't understand the formation at all, and it was unlikely that he would join the research, and his life would inevitably fall into an extremely terrifying state of emptiness. If he wants to maintain his sanity, maybe he can only fall in love with his junior brother to avoid being driven crazy by boredom. Chapter 170 Test Taker, please enjoy the taste. Gaikyuu Palace, Central Courtyard. This is an open courtyard with a complex Gaikyuu formation painted on the ground, like a rotating kaleidoscope, constantly changing dazzling lines and structures. Above the head is a deep and endless ravine, and the endless seawater constitutes a dark and lightless night sky, which makes people feel daunting. The only light source, apart from the light projected from the windows of the surrounding side halls, is probably the light of the Gaikyuu formation itself. These spells and silver lines that make up the formation also glow. Luoyang did not rashly step into the courtyard, because there were many monks behind the windows around observing the formation. Even if he just stepped on it and blocked the sight of a few of them, it might cause a violent reaction from the demon. You know, the demon is unreasonable. Therefore, he just walked carefully along the open area around the formation and came to the pile of wood in the corner. Judging from the texture of these woods, it seems that they were cut down from the abandoned garden in the backyard and piled up in the corner casually. Luoyang used his spiritual sense to penetrate the cracks in the wood and carefully explored it, but he did not find anything unusual. It seemed to be just ordinary wood, but why could it have the ability to resist sinking into the ravine? We need to do an experiment, Luoyang said, taking a piece of wood here. What? Mishu was caught off guard and did not hear clearly. She was a little absent-minded all the way, and her mind was filled with all kinds of crazy thoughts. For example, if the two of them were really trapped here for hundreds of thousands of years, in order to resist the erosion of time, she and her junior brother decided to become Taoist couples together. Should they have children later? In the world of cultivating immortals, cultivators who become Taoist couples can choose to have children or not, depending on their personal preferences. For Shiluli, on the one hand, it was the subtle influence of the family environment. Elder Shiding was obviously not a non-marriage and non-childbearing person, and on the other hand, she was also worried that her junior brother would change his mind in the future. If they could have a child, would it be better to tie him down? Luoyang certainly didn't expect that this young lady with an unconventional mind would even start to consider whether to have children after being trapped here, so he patiently repeated his idea again. At present, it seems that in addition to the Gaikyuu Palace itself, the wood used to make the Sanu treasure ship can resist the sinking trend in the Great Ravine. If there is no result from directly studying the Gaikyuu formation, you can also try to study these woods. Simply put, go to the backyard to get the same wood, and compare it with the wood piled near the formation to find the differences and similarities between the two. Shilly understood this time, and she said obediently, thinking that she should be able to be a good wife and mother, right? No problem. Luli, you can do it. Luoyang was a little surprised when he saw this. You know, when has this young lady shown such a well-behaved and docile attitude in the past? Even if she agreed to his request, it was because I think it's very interesting, not because this is the request of my junior brother. So he guessed that Mishu was really scared this time, so he held her hand and comforted her. Don't worry, senior sister, we can definitely get out of here. At least I can get out. Mishu had a shy impulse to break free when he held her hands, but then she thought that if she was trapped here, what else could she do except stay with her junior brother? So she could only turn her head and nod imperceptibly. Luoyang looked at her and found it more and more strange. Mishu's rational endurance was too poor. How long have we been here? She can't stand it anymore. Forget it, after all, she is a minor, so it's not good to blame her too much. Luoyang took her to the backyard garden, walked around the edge for a while, and noticed that there were indeed signs of felling in some areas. Except for the Pfunmangjun, I don't think anyone would cut down trees here, Who? Luoyang suddenly shouted loudly, and the hand in his sleeve had already released the Taoist magic, which frightened Shilili so much that she quickly hid behind him. However, the person who ran out of the woods was not a vicious person with bad intentions, but just a crazy old Taoist priest. Useless. Useless. He laughed loudly. Another latecomer is studying wood. Don't you know that if it is built into a boat without people, it will float, but if there are people, it will drown? This road is blocked. This road is blocked. The old Taoist priest ran away crying and laughing, leaving only Shilili with a confused face and Luoyang with a gloomy face. Luoyang also heard the other party's crazy words clearly. He said that the way to study the wood for treasure ships had been tried by pioneers a long time ago. Perhaps it was because the big ravine at this location had too strong a sealing force. If the wood soaked in the power of the formation was carved into a boat, it would only float up when no one was riding. Once someone sat on it, it would not be able to bear the weight on it, but would continue to sink. On the other hand, the Gaikyuu Palace can float steadily in this position no matter how many monks come there. It is enough to show that the two are not at the same level in resisting the sinking force of the Great Ravine. Luo Yan cut a few pieces of wood from the backyard garden and brought them back to his residence, and began to compare them with the wood near the Gaikyuu formation in the courtyard. From the outside, there is indeed no difference between the two. But if you use your spiritual sense to scan the inside, there are subtle differences after comparison. The distribution density of wood fiber in the wood in the backyard garden has obvious regularity, because when woody plants grow, they will produce corresponding phototropism changes according to the direction of the surrounding fixed light sources. The distribution density of wood fiber near the Gaikyuu formation in the central courtyard is chaotic, and there is no similar change. There are two experiments to be done next. One is to carve the wood in the backyard courtyard into a treasure ship, and apply the phase contrast technique in the formation to make it grow rapidly after leaving the water film as a control group to see if it can float successfully. If not, it proves that floating is not the nature of the wood itself, but is caused by the Gaikyuu formation in the courtyard. Secondly, the wood fiber distribution inside the wood in the central courtyard should be refreshed and arranged with the wood element divine light in the postnatal 5 elements great extinction divine light, and then see if it can float. If not, it proves that the ability of the treasure ship to float is related to the distribution of wood fibers inside it. Luo Yan was concentrating on designing the experiment, and suddenly he was hit in the face by hair. He turned his head in confusion, and saw Miss Shiluli, who had tied a double ponytail hairstyle playfully and was playing with her ponytails out of boredom. Senior sister. What's wrong, junior brother? Don't interfere with my thoughts, thank you. Shiluli was stunned for a long time, and immediately became furious. Senior sister, I haven't married you yet, and you are starting to dislike me now. My father is not here, and you were too lazy to even do the superficial work, right? Her face was as gloomy as water, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She quietly walked around behind Luo Yan, who was unaware, and suddenly stretched out her right arm to embrace him in her arms, and suddenly strangled his neck and lifted him up. Click. Chapter 171. What cooking and doing problems have in common. A month later. In his residence, Luo Yan was writing furiously at his desk. Beside him, half of the room was filled with test data from this period, as well as more possible conjectures and verification schemes. The more he wrote, the more painful his expression became. In the end, his eyes turned red with anxiety, like Party B, who had changed the scheme hundreds of times but still failed. He wanted to overturn the whole table. Why are these array formulas wrong no matter how they are modified? Luo Yan was so annoyed that he almost wanted to tear his scalp off. I told you a long time ago that the previous step should not be calculated that way, Kumlan Mirror said naggingly beside him. Ajin, it's useless. Changing a formula is still wrong. The initial assumption is wrong, Kingping Sword began to argue with Kumlan Mirror. At first, Luo Yan was in the mood to tell the two voices in his mind to shut up, but now he was only indifferent and ignored. In the room, another place near the door was opened up by Shiluli as a kitchen. As Luo Yan became more and more addicted to doing the questions, Miss Shi, who loved food, could only support herself and began to learn cooking seriously. Although she had never touched ordinary water before, after cooking more, the food she made was not so inedible. In addition, Luo Yan's complexion was visibly getting worse recently, and Miss Shi was worried, so she planned to make some delicious food to take care of him. Of course, satisfying her own appetite was only secondary, and the main purpose was to reward the hard-working junior brother. Cut the ginseng and polygonacum into pieces, dice the scutellarian, blanch the beef cubes and put them in the pot together, and add some bay leaves and peppercorns. Shiluli covered the pot, admired her work, and clapped her hands with satisfaction. In the side hall of Gaikyuu Palace, in addition to a large number of books on formations, there are also many messy miscellaneous books. For example, this magical recipe for cooking with various immortal herbs made Shiluli feel like he had found a treasure. It would take at least an hour and a half to dissolve the ginseng and polygonacum into the soup and stew the beef until it was well cooked, so Shiluli carefully adjusted the fire control magic weapon and then turned around to play with Luo Yan. Junior brother. She sat down next to Luo Yan, pulled his arm and asked, "Guess what I made today?" "Dish." Luo Yan didn't even raise his head. "What dish?" Shirley playfully kept it a secret. Luoyan ignored her, paused for a moment, and then wrote quickly again. He suddenly had a brilliant guess about the formation model of the Q formation, which needed to be quickly calculated and confirmed. Seeing that the junior brother ignored her again, Shirley was a little annoyed, but she barely held back. Okay, he is now studying the Q formation, I don't care. Don't eat a single bite of the stewed beef later. Shirley returned to the kitchen and continued to tinker with her new dish. Add vegetable oil and butter, stir fry in a pan, pour in flour and stir well to increase the viscosity. Then add the soul of this dish, the sauce made from the 100-year-old red fruit. It must be more than 100 years old, otherwise it will taste too sour. Then stir constantly with a spoon, fry on low heat until the water in the pot is completely dry, then add water in batches and continue to stir, let it slowly melt, and finally turn into a pot of delicious, spiritual nourishing soup. Shirley rolled up his sleeves and swung the big spoon for a long time. He felt his arms were so sore that he simply threw the spoon away and took out his flying sword to wash it clean. Then he pinched a sword gesture with his left hand and let the flying sword circle around in the pot and stir. The soup finally turned into a bright orange color. Shirley raised his sword finger and moved the poor flying sword that was already in a mess, letting it fly out of the pot to shake off the soup, and then fall into the bucket next to it. Add salt to the soup. She continued to follow that recipe, add wine, and then add dried scallop powder to enhance the flavor. A small amount of maltose. Next, take out the previously stewed beef, polygonatium and ginseng and pour them into the jar. Mix the mushrooms, pitted red dates, mix well, and finally pour the soup. Continue to simmer. Shirley decided not to cover the lid this time, so that the aroma of the stewed beef would fill the whole room, waiting for the salivating junior brother to come and ask for food from her. The mellow aroma of beef and the unique fragrance of various spiritual medicines began to overflow from the pot. She cooked the washed rice, then folded her arms triumphantly and waited for Luoyan for a long time, but he didn't even raise his head, still calculating the formula. The array formula was still wrong. The so-called wonderful inspiration before has now been proven to be an illusion. Luoyan was so angry that he wanted to kill indiscriminately. No matter what he killed, he would be done. Shirley looked at his back, her expression changed from smug to hesitant, then confused, and finally to furious. No way, he didn't even raise his head. Is the beef I stewed not fragrant? I think it is still quite fragrant, hiss. After swallowing a big mouthful of saliva, Miss She decided to confirm whether there was something wrong with her food. First, she drank a little soup. It was fresh and delicious, and it was also spiritually nourishing. It was a delicacy worth tasting for those who practice immortality. Then she ate a piece of stewed beef. It was soft, smooth, and tender, and it was full of soup. At the same time, it had the aroma of meat and spiritual medicine. The layering was extremely clear. So why was the junior brother not interested? Shirley thought and tasted while unknowingly eating most of the whole jar of beef. When she came to her senses, there was only a shallow layer of soup and 3 or 4 pieces of beef left. She shuddered suddenly and subconsciously looked at Luoyan with a guilty look. After confirming that the junior brother was still absorbed in the problem and had not noticed this side, Miss She quickly took a small bowl, scooped out the remaining soup and beef, and then quickly cleaned the large jar to destroy the corpse. Just after washing it, I heard Luoyan suddenly throw his pen. I really can't solve it, I won't do it anymore. After finally suppressing the frustration, Luoyan slowly came back to his senses. There must be no answer to this question. My one smell, 1,000 understandings characteristic has theoretically given me the most powerful understanding in the world. A question that even I can't solve must have no answer, that's the only explanation. Let's eat something. Alas, so much time wasted. Luoyan got up to serve the rice, and tasted the soup and beef that Miss She left for him, and immediately praised it. Senior sister, your beef is absolutely amazing. The soup is even more amazing with rice. The overall evaluation is like refining a magical medicine into a magical pill, which is almost a qualitative leap, as long as you like it. Shirley said guiltily. Luoyan didn't know what she was thinking, or he had guessed it but pretended not to know, just continued to brush the synchronization value, and said with a smile. So that's it, I know, it's to cook beef and spiritual medicine together, right? The originally ordinary and simple ingredients, after being soaked in the medicinal juice, unexpectedly can become such a delicacy. As he spoke, his face suddenly darkened. Wait, boil the spiritual medicine into juice, and then let the beef soak it? The so-called Q formation, could it also be some kind of juice? Seeing his face suddenly darken, Shiluli hurriedly explained. The reason why there is only so little left is because I was too hungry just now, and you didn't seem to want to come over for a long time. Luoyang stood up suddenly, hugged Shiluli tightly, kissed her on the side of her cheek, and then rushed out of the room. Shiluli was stunned for a moment, and then covered her cheeks tightly. The body is hot. Chapter 172. The mantis stalks the cicada, right? Walking quickly in the corridor, Luoyang's thoughts became smoother and clearer. From the beginning to now, he has been looking for the relationship between the Gaiku formation and the wood of the treasure ship. Little did he know that the so-called Gaiku formation he saw was not the formation itself. For example, it was like he attributed the taste of the stew beef just now to the special soup. However, he could not mix the same soup no matter what. The reason is that the soup itself is the intermediate product after the superposition of multiple raw materials. The Gaiku formation observed in the courtyard, which is changing all the time, is actually some kind of extremely complex intermediate product. To deduce the result from the intermediate product is like solving a multivariate equation, which will be confused by countless possible answers. The real key to solving the problem is to find that corresponding elixir that really boils the soup in the pot, that is, the real Gaiku formation. Coming to the central courtyard, Luoyang stared at the rotating and changing lines calmly, and the corresponding geometric model had been constructed in his mind. Suppose that the Gaiku formation itself is three-dimensional, and what we see is actually just the motion profile of the three-dimensional model following a certain route in 2 dimensions. Then, we only need to form countless frames in our minds by changing the motion profile over time, and then connect all these motion frames together to form an animation, which is the shape of the Gaiku formation itself. Do you understand what he is saying? Kingping Sword asked in a low voice. Not really. Kunlun Mirror replied, but I roughly understand a little. You can actually keep up with his thinking. Kingping Sword said unhappily, who is the natal sword weapon? Shiluli hurried over from behind and saw the junior brother staring at the Gaiku formation nervously, with cold sweat on his forehead, as if he was overworked and close to overdrawing. No. No, if it is upgraded from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, the complexity is still too high. It needs to continue to upgrade dimensions. He began to compress the model that was constantly moving in his mind inward. If it weren't for the countless array knowledge he absorbed in the side hall during this period of time, he would never have the theoretical basis for such complex calculations. But more importantly, his talent of understanding everything at once provided enough computing power. Junior brother, what's wrong with you? Seeing his body start to tremble, Shiluli hurried forward to stop him, but was suddenly blocked by a snow-white longsword. I can't let you disturb him now. Xu Mangjin, holding a longsword, emerged from the shadow of the corridor with a gloomy, strange, and eager smile on his face. I have waited for this day for a long time. Luoyang in the central courtyard slowly turned red in the face, and a large amount of qi from dancing along the meridians went up into the brain. With the rapid movement of thoughts, the whole sea of consciousness seemed to be boiling. Arjing. The Kingping Sword in the spine suddenly said, if this continues, he will burn his spirit and die. We must cut off his Ren and meridians to block his return of Qi. Don't cut it yet. The Kunlun Mirror in the sea of consciousness said, believe me, he will be fine. The Kingping Sword hesitated for a moment and said coldly, okay, but if he dies because of this, you know what will happen to us. Luoyang was completely unaware of the conversation between the mirror and the sword in his body, or rather, he turned a deaf ear to it. At this time, he had already put all his energy into the calculation, and at the same time he was constantly operating the sea of Qi, mobilizing the true essence, and injecting it into the brain like a steam engine, stimulating the talent of hearing 1,000 enlightenments to the maximum, forcing his thoughts to work faster. The model of the Gaiku formation in his mind has been compressed to the 8th dimension. Countless complex lines are constantly curled and compressed, gradually showing the prototype of some amazing and extremely gorgeous high-dimensional existence. It's not enough. We have to continue calculating. When compressed to the 9th dimension, the changes in the lines have become extremely slow, and the requirements for computing power have increased by more than one level. From Luoyang's eyes, nostrils, ears and mouth, tiny drops of blood began to seep out slowly. That was because the pressure on the brain was too high, causing the end of the meridians to rupture and ooze out tiny drops of blood. Shiluli wanted to rush over and shout, but found that her limbs were shaking like lead, and her upper and lower jaws were directly stuck together, so she couldn't make any sound at all. Not only that, the invisible pressure was getting heavier and heavier, making her almost unable to stand steadily, let alone activate the magic weapon. This is Dragon Power. Jun put his hands in his sleeves, as if exerting dragon power had no effort at all. He stared at Luo Yan, who was shaky in the courtyard, with an almost frozen smile on his face, but his eyes flashed with a gleam of desire. Many monks in the side hall also noticed the abnormality in the central courtyard at this time. Many people had entered the corridor and rushed to the entrance of the central courtyard. The 10th dimension. Luo Yan's thoughts were suddenly interrupted, and he felt as if his soul was split. On one hand, the rational thinking stimulated by the talent of one hearing, 1,000 understandings was roaring and running continuously like the power engine on a high-speed train. On the other hand, his consciousness was slowly pulled out of his rationality and began to examine his physical condition. Not good, very bad. At this time, his subcutaneous body temperature had risen to nearly 70 degrees. It was impossible for a mortal to survive such a high fever, and what protected him was the sword energy of the Kingping sword. The Kingping sword protected his meridians with sword energy, and continued to run that bodybuilding secret technique, using the true essence to repair the parts of his body that were burned by the high temperature. The Kunlun mirror shone brightly, suppressing the boiling sea of consciousness, like a long railroad track, restraining the running train of thoughts, so that it would not rush directly under the cliff. The 11th dimension. All the movement lines, runes, structures, were suddenly compressed into a limited boundary entity. This array that existed in 11 dimensions was so complex, gorgeous, and natural that it was running fast in Luo Yan's sea of consciousness, transforming into countless dazzling patterns. As the Gai Qa in his sea of consciousness was running, Luo Yan noticed that the Gai Qa under his feet was also starting to change in speed. The two states of change were getting closer and closer, and in the end they were almost completely synchronized. Then, from the center of the Gai Qa under his feet, a hole was broken in the void, and a black shuttle-shaped object emerged from it. Luo Yan hadn't made any move yet, but he heard Xun Mangjun beside him suddenly laugh, and then he turned into a stream of light and rushed into the central courtyard, reaching out to grab the object first. At this time, the object had already emerged halfway from the void. With Luo Yan's rich experience, how could he not see that it was a shuttle-shaped magic weapon? How powerful should the magic weapon be that can be used by the Gai Qa to refine and hide? Luo Yan remained calm, trying to support his weak body. He began to pinch his fingers in his sleeves. He was about to draw out the acquired 5 elements Great Extinction Divine Light to confront the waiting Xun Mangjun, but he saw the other party suddenly throw something at him. Shiluli. Why is it Mishi? Luo Yan, who was originally calm and unhurried, subconsciously dispersed the divine light in his sleeves, hurriedly caught Shiluli's body, and stepped back quickly. Little junior brother, don't. In an instant, Shiluli withdrew from the central courtyard and escaped from the range of Long Wei. Only then did she regain control of her body. Just as she was about to speak, she saw a flash of light in the corridor next to her. The ancient monks hiding outside the courtyard also saw the outline of the shuttle-shaped magic weapon clearly. You know, most shuttle-shaped magic weapons have the ability to shuttle and manipulate space. In addition, this magic weapon appeared from the Gai Qa formation, which clearly showed that it was the key to leaving Gai Qa. How could these crazy and almost insane monks hold back? They immediately rushed to the central courtyard, and at the same time, they used all the most powerful spells, flying swords, magic weapons, all of them to attack Xun Mangjun, who was in the front. Only a furious dragon roar was heard, and under the bombardment of countless lights, a white dragon had already soared into the sky and broke through the top water film of the central courtyard. And what it held in its mouth was the shuttle-shaped magic weapon that appeared from the center of the Gai Qa formation. It was about 3 feet and 7 inches long, and the whole body was black, as if it could absorb all the light from the outside world. Seeing countless monks penetrate the water film and chase after the white dragon, Shiluli hurriedly held Luo Yan's hand, thinking that the little junior brother had spent so much effort and energy, but in the end he made wedding clothes for others. At this time, he must be feeling very uncomfortable, right? But she didn't know how to comfort her junior brother, so she could only silently hold his hand tightly, palm to palm, fingers interlocked. Luo Yan stared into the air expressionlessly, and King Ping Jian's half-smiley voice came into his mind. Why aren't you going to chase after them? Maybe there's a chance to get it back. No need. Luo Yan sneered. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 173 The Yellow Bird is Me Too. The huge white dragon penetrated the water film and soared into the sky like a silver thread. The dragon's might fell down like a mountain. Below it, countless figures of monks also broke through the water film, used various magical methods to resist the dragon's might, and quickly chased after the white dragon. However, after leaving the water film, the speed of both the white dragon and the monks was obviously slowing down. It was difficult to mobilize the true essence in the big gully. Therefore, everyone relied on the initial velocity and inertia at the moment of breaking out of the water film. Seeing that the momentum was about to end, the white dragon injected the last bit of true essence he had prepared into the shuttle-shaped magic weapon at full speed and activated it. The black shuttle vibrated rapidly, just for a moment, and then exploded. The body of the white dragon had disappeared, and the black shuttle had begun to fall downwards. The monks below were already in a commotion. The disappearance of Xun Mangjan just proved that this black shuttle-shaped magic weapon was the key to teleporting people out of Gaiqiu. After a brief commotion, greater chaos and conflict broke out. Luoyang ran in the corridor holding Xiaoluli, and saw that the central courtyard outside the window was almost as bright as day. Countless spell aftermaths fell to the ground like star rain, as if to destroy the entire courtyard. Fortunately, the Gaiqiu building was strong enough, and it did not even tremble or shake under the destruction of the spell aftermath. After escaping to the side hall, Luoyang put Xiaoluli down, and the two stared out the window together. At this time, the light outside the window had gradually subsided, and there were dozens of fallen corpses on the ground. The rest were either knocked into the ravine or grabbed the black shuttle magic weapon first, activated it and teleported away. After another half a minute, the black shuttle fell from the air and landed right at the center of the Gaiqiu formation on the ground of the courtyard, suspended in the air and motionless. Xiaoluli. She showed a puzzled expression, and after a while she said, "They just teleported away and didn't take the magic weapon with them." Teleported away? Luoyang glanced at her strangely. How is that possible? Borrowed time does not need to be returned, right? Borrowed? Xiaoluli asked in confusion. What do you mean? In the Gaiqiu Palace, the flow of time is increased by 120 times compared to the outside world. After confirming that there were no cultivators outside, Luoyang walked towards the courtyard and said, 3 days in the outside world is 1 year here. However, lifespan and cultivation are calculated according to the time in the outside world. What do you think is the reason? In fact, if you understand the principles of the Gaiqiu formation in depth, you will know that time is not accelerated, but compressed. 1 day in the outside world is equal to 120 days in Gaiqiu. It is not that the time in Gaiqiu goes faster, but that the 120 days of each cultivator here are compressed to 1 day synchronized with the outside world. It's just because the cultivators are in the time system of the Gaiqiu system, their perception of time is also compressed, so they don't perceive the problem. I don't understand. Xiaoluli seemed to understand. Let me put it this way. Luoyang explained patiently, you understand it this way. In Gaiqiu, for every day you spend, the Gaiqiu formation will lend you an extra 119 days. That is, you have actually only spent 1 day, but you have perceived that you have spent 120 days. You mean, although Xiaoluli did not understand what time relativity was, she still knew what borrowing was. These extra 119 days have to be returned, right? Once a cultivator leaves the Gaiqiu formation and enters the time coordinate system of the outside world, it is necessary to convert it. Luoyang said seriously, the time originally compressed into 1 day will be restored to 120 days. That is to say, the body will fast forward 119 days. Xiaoluli was stunned for a moment, and when she understood the hidden meaning behind it, she immediately felt a chill. 1 year has passed here, but only 3 days have passed in the outside world, and your body has only aged for 3 days. Luoyang sighed. However, once you leave the range of Gaiqiu, the 1 year compressed in 3 days will burst out, causing your body to age rapidly to 1 year. And the cultivators here have lived for at least 100,000 years, Xiaoluli said in a trance. Once they leave the range of Gaiqiu, they will die immediately. Luoyang whispered, even their bodies have decayed directly under the erosion of time, so they seem to have teleported away, but in fact they did not take the black shuttle with them, which means that they have actually fallen. His tone was a little emotional, thinking that he had realized it too late. The lifespan in Gaiqiu is almost infinite. How is it possible? You know, in the world before crossing, there was the folk story of Urachi Mataro. Even in this world, Ling Yunpo and senior sister experienced the Cloud Sea Sky realm together, and accelerated time by 30 years in a giant cocoon. I should have known that this avenue of time is like a commercial bank. You only pay it for time, but don't expect to earn even a second from it. Even if it is the cunning mirror, which allows you to jump back and forth on multiple timelines, you still have to pay the time you should pay. One person plays 4 roles, and the price is that in the eyes of the outside world, your lifespan is only 1/4 of that of an ordinary person. Then Shirley was silent for a long time before finally breathing a sigh of relief. The two stayed in Gaiku for a month, which was only 6 hours in the outside world, and their lifespan was temporarily reduced by only 6 hours. After leaving Gaiku, it was just a month of acceleration, nothing to worry about. Let's go. Luoyang turned around. Pack up your things. Yeah. Shirley was about to hold his hand, but suddenly reacted. Wait, that means I won't be trapped here? So I don't have to marry my junior brother. As soon as this thought came up, all the grievances of being ignored by him in the past month emerged one after another like mushrooms after rain. Today, I finally made it through, and I don't have to endure it anymore. Wow. Shirley suddenly roared and rushed forward. Little thief Luoyang, take my punch. Luoyang could never figure out why Mishi had such a big grudge of this time, to the point that she threw him to the ground and rolled for a few rounds, and then hit him with her pink fists. Fortunately, she had not practiced the bodybuilding secret technique for a long time, and it didn't hurt at all when she hit him. Luoyang just thought she was happy and let her vent for a long time. Going to the central courtyard to get the black shuttle magic weapon, Shirley shouted to see the treasure. She took it over and examined it carefully, and saw a line of immortal seals engraved on it. If it was an ancient seal, Mishi could still read it. The immortal seal was indeed beyond her understanding. Even in Yu King Temple, only a few elders who were linguistically interested had the ability to interpret it. Therefore, she returned it to Luoyang with a lack of interest. Luoyang took it and asked Kunlun Mirror in his sea of consciousness. Jin, what's written on it? Its name is written on it. Kunlun Mirror scanned for a while and said, its name is Kaiankun Universe Creation Tianu Divine Shuttle. Luoyang. This name is stacking buff, right? Chapter 174 Return to the Sea. As we all know, in the Taoist system, Kaiankun, universe, and creation are all high-level words with special meanings. Kaiankun means that yin and yang are perfect and will not be restrained by any of the 5 elements. Universe means that it has the ability of time and space. In a sense, the Kunlun Mirror can also be called the universe mirror, and there is nothing wrong with it. Creation means that it has the ability to evolve from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to all things. Luoyang knows each of these words, but he doesn't know what they mean when they are put together. If these words are true, then this Tianu Divine Shuttle may have been buffed to the level of an innate spiritual treasure. Of course, not everyone follows the naming convention. For example, the Yin sect is often strict and introverted, while the Jiri sect is more flamboyant and unrestrained. This shuttle came from the ancient times before the Yin sect and the Jiri sect, so Luoyang is more inclined to believe that the caster is a more middle school student. Gaiku is not a good place to study magic weapons, so Luoyang and Shirley went to pack up first. All kinds of ancient books in the side hall, whether they are array formations or records of other things, were packed up and taken away, and no one was left behind. All the spiritual herbs in the abandoned garden in the backyard were pulled out. As for the common herbs and wild animals, they were left to continue to reproduce here. Back in the room, Shirley looked at the bedding, pots and pans, and felt a little troubled. Logically speaking, these things were ordinary objects and had no value at all. But for girls, there was a word called memorable significance. So after thinking for a while, Shirley pulled out some of the less precious spiritual herbs in the storage bag and placed these ordinary objects instead. After packing everything, Luoyang took Shirley and activated the Tianjiri shuttle, and the two disappeared in Gaiku in an instant. On the sea, Ling Yushu was sitting blankly on the broken half of the wreckage, looking at the distance with sorrow. My junior brother and junior sister sank. How can I see my master after I leave the secret realm? Although it was because the ship was hit by the aftermath of the battle in the distance, so what? Can it change the sadness of the master who lost his beloved daughter and beloved disciple? How about running away? Let's pretend that we all disappeared in the secret realm, so that master can also have a little luck and hope. Suddenly a black shadow flashed by, and Luoyang and Shirley had already broken through the water, and landed on the wreckage of the ship by inertia. Big brother! The two shouted together. Ling Yushu stood there in disbelief, and then couldn't help but shed tears. It took some time to explain the whole story to Ling Yushu. In short, the two fell into a ruin, and then Luoyang tried his best to break the formation, and was finally teleported out of the sea. As for what Yun Mang Jun, what Gai Q, and what Tianyushan Chu, all were hidden and not mentioned. Shili listened quietly at the sight, and thought it through in his heart. After all, the Tianyushan Chu and Gai Q formations represent extremely high ranks, and it may not be a good thing to let the big brother who has not yet formed a baby know. The secrets of this trip can only be told to my father at most, and it is better to keep it secret from the brothers and sisters. Ling Yushu listened patiently and sighed a few times. Of course, he could tell that his junior brother was evasive, but it was his junior brother and sister's adventure after all, so he didn't care. As long as the two of them could return safely, Ling Yushu would go back to Burning Sense and kowtow to the three pure ones. So the three of them used the broken planks as oars and began to row towards the nearest island. Shili's hands were sore from rowing, and he couldn't help but signal Luoyan with his eyes. How long would it take to row? Or should we take out your shuttle to hurry on? Luoyan responded with his eyes. No, it's not time yet. Ling Yushu saw the two people's glances clearly from the corner of his eyes, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of loss as a single dog. On second thought, with the spoiled personality of the junior sister, it would be nice to be a junior sister, but to be a Taoist partner, the junior brother has to suffer this hardship. So his mood improved again. It took a whole day for the three of them to finally row the boat to the small island they had landed on before. Shili jumped off the boat, ran onto the beach in a hurry, and then, regardless of her ladylike demeanor, she lay on her back on the beach. Luoyan also jumped into the sea, pushed the wreckage of the treasure ship onto the beach, and asked casually, "Do you want to eat something? I remember there are some wild animals in the forest, I'll go and get them later. I want to eat barbecue." Shili, who was lying on the beach, groaned, "Luoyan, make it for me." "Okay, what does the eldest brother want to eat?" Luoyan asked. Ling Yushu. "We are all monks who have already practiced fasting. What's good about ordinary meat? I'll do whatever I want, and join you." Ling Yushu said reluctantly. Luoyan's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly realized that the eldest brother didn't eat. Think about it carefully, except for the weird mishi, which monk still covets the desire for food. Of course, the words have been said, and Luoyan doesn't plan to make up for it later. You must know that the more you cover up, the more flaws there are. It is better to go with the flow so that the eldest brother will not be more suspicious. After careful consideration, he stood up and walked towards the woods on the island, and soon shot a deer back. Set up the grill, bleed the deer, then remove the internal organs, apply seasoning and marinate. Luoyan did all this skillfully, then went to the beach to wash his hands, and saw the eldest brother looking at him with a confused expression. That look clearly said, "Where did you get so many seasonings?" "I picked them up in the ruins." Luoyan explained casually. "Oh, I picked them up." Ling Yushu didn't doubt it and simply ignored it. After all, it is quite troublesome and meaningless to think about why there are barbecue seasonings in an underwater ruin. During the time waiting for marination, Luoyan had nothing to do, so he sat down on the beach and looked into the distance boredly. Without having to read books, do exercises, or study formations, the whole person felt relaxed. "Is it ready?" Shili started yelling, "Have you started roasting?" "Not yet." Luoyan said without looking back, "It still needs to be marinated for a while." "What are you marinating for?" Shili stood up with an impatient look on her face. "Change the knife, add more salt and oil, and marinate while roasting, isn't it okay?" She took out a knife from the storage bag, skillfully cut a hole in the surface of the venison, stuck the pepper and salt in, then took out the fire control magic weapon to heat it underneath, and then began to use a small brush to brush oil layer by layer. The expression on Ling Yushu's face next to him had changed from confusion to horror. Is this person really a junior sister? Ling Yushu asked himself that he was not a person who was far from the kitchen. Because he loved drinking, he often made some side dishes by himself. But that's the junior sister. She has been spoiled by the quantum workshop since she was a child. Let alone going to the kitchen, she has never even seen raw meat. Noticing his brother's completely stunned look, Shili explained casually, "I learned it in the ruins. So this underwater ruin is the kitchen of a restaurant." Chapter 175 is not available in the current version, right? The entrance to the secret realm of the Sanu treasure ship. Elder Shiding was pacing back and forth on the ship. Every time he saw a disciple coming out of the secret realm, he would smile amiably, but there was still a hint of sadness between his brows. "It's not Luli, it's not Luli, why is it still not Luli?" Finally, Ling Yushu emerged from the secret realm, and Elder Shiding's heart instantly rose to his throat. Then came Luoyan. Elder Sheding took a deep breath again, and just as he was about to speak and ask, he saw Shillelagh finally appear. So the sadness on his face disappeared, and he only heard Shillelagh shout out, and then he threw himself into his arms like a young swallow into the forest. "It's good that you're fine, it's good that you're fine." Elder Sheding hugged his daughter with a smile, then turned to look at Lemmushu. "Thank you for your hard work, Chu. This is what I should do as the eldest senior brother." Lemmushu felt a little guilty, because he actually messed up the matter halfway. As for the fact that the younger junior brother and sister finally escaped, it had nothing to do with him. Luo Yan, who really played a decisive role in this matter, just nodded calmly at the side. After a brief greeting, everyone set off for the return voyage. After returning to Tiangong workshop, Shillelagh and Luo Yan exchanged a few glances, and then told Elder Sheding everything about Gaikyu. Elder Sheding sat on the chair, and frowned slightly when he heard that the two fell into the water. When he talked about the appearance of the underwater dragon palace, he couldn't help but pull his beard. When the 100,000 ancient books in the side hall were mentioned, Elder Sheding immediately stood up and asked in a lost voice, "Have you brought back all those ancient books?" "We have brought them back." Luo Yan and Shillelagh took out the storage bag, took out all the ancient books inside, and soon piled up a small mountain on the floor of the hall. Elder Sheding. He didn't know what expression to show for a moment. The two sects of Nanjiri were destroyed, and countless weapon casting traditions were lost. Now that no one can recast the 10th level immortal sword, the sadness of the academic discontinuity can be seen. Now that there are so many ancient books for no reason, Elder Sheding can hardly suppress his joy, but thinking that these are the results of his daughter and beloved disciple's life and death, he can't help but feel a little scared. Luo Yan observed his master's expression and knew what he was thinking. He quickly explained that he met many ancient monks in Gaikyu, all of whom were talented and spoke well. They worked together to break the formation and tried to escape from Gaikyu, and the relationship was very harmonious. During this time, I learned a lot of knowledge about formations, and Shillelagh also learned cooking techniques. We all grew up very well. Elder Sheding listened to it with a serious expression, and then asked, "So how did you escape?" "I cracked the Gaikyu formation and got this magic weapon." Luo Yan quickly presented the Tianyu divine shuttle. Miss Shi had also seen this treasure, so it was impossible to hide it. In addition, on the way back, Luo Yan had carefully explored this Kaiankun universe creation Tianyu divine shuttle with his divine sense and found that except for its extremely fast speed and the ability to carry people to fly, it actually had no other functions. If this is true, then such a domineering name would be wasted. Of course, the possibility is not great. Luo Yan is more inclined to believe that there is some secret in this divine shuttle, but his current rank and knowledge level are too low, so he can't find it. Elder Sheding took the shuttle, looked at it for a few times, and said strangely, "This shuttle is so strange, why does it look like it has no spirituality at all?" "I don't know either." Luo Yan said honestly, "Maybe the magic power is locked in it, so I can't find it." "Well, it does look like an ancient wonder." Elder Sheding stared at the immortal seal on the shuttle, muttered for a while, and said, "Come with me." Luo Yan hurriedly followed his master's steps, and Miss Shi also followed calmly, as if she didn't regard herself as an outsider at all. The three left the Tiangong workshop and came to the Tianji pavilion not far away. "I want to use the dragon and tiger tractor for 3 hours." Elder Sheding ordered the deacon, "Please reject other applications for me." "Okay." The deacon said hurriedly, "Elder, please use it, I will go and discuss it with other applicants." Luo Yan and Shillelagh followed into the Tianji pavilion, and saw a huge device placed in the center, covering an area of more than 60 square meters. The outer shell was mainly made of copper balls, and there were countless iron rings swirling around it. This is the Dragon Tiger Tractor of Penglayu King Temple, which can observe extremely subtle spiritual power structures and is the best identification equipment in the temple. Elder Sheding pinched the dough formula, as if he had entered some password, and the copper ball began to rotate by itself, and the iron ring also quickly rotated back to its position, and finally separated to the left and right, revealing a jade platform. After placing the Tianyu divine shuttle on the platform, Elder Sheding pinched the formula again, and the copper ball closed again. Luo Yan was watching from behind with envy and curiosity, thinking that this thing was the scanning tunnel microscope in the world of cultivation. If Arjun and Kingpin were placed in it and carefully identified one by one, I wonder what the result would be, but if they were both girls, wouldn't the identification be like perspective? "I advise you not to ask for trouble," Kunlun Mirror suddenly said. "I advise you not to seek death." Kingpin's sword also threatened. Luo Yan sneered and said nothing, and saw Elder Shiding come to the side of the Dragon Tiger tractor, rotate one of the protrusions for a moment, and then stare at the runes on it in a daze. After a while, he turned around and said, "This ancient magic weapon is sealed." Seal? Luo Yan and Mishi asked at the same time. Yes, there are 3 seals on it. Elder Shiding nodded and said, "Before the seal is lifted, I'm afraid it can only exert 1% of its power. Please tell me in detail, teacher." Luo Yan said respectfully. The first seal requires the 9 Nether Yin Soul Stone and the 9 Crow Kayang Stone to unlock it. Elder Shiding sighed and said, "The second seal is deeper, we have to unlock the first seal to know." Shili ran to look at the runes, while Luo Yan was silent for a long time, revealing a helpless bitter smile. The 9 Nether Yin Soul Stone is a deposit of Yin Qi, usually in the ground of mass graves or ancient battlefields. This thing is not so scarce that it is a rare treasure, but many of the Ghost Duo's skills require the help of the 9 Nether Yin Soul Stone, so it has been almost plundered to extinction in the past 100 years. The 9 Crow Blazing Sunstone corresponds to an object where Yankee gathers, and it only appears near the habitat of the Golden Crow clan. The problem is that the Golden Crow clan, as a demon clan, had been driven to the Eastern Empire demon realm in ancient times. After hundreds of thousands of years, even if there were any remaining 9 Crow Blazing Sunstones, they would have been looted by various cultivators. Seeing that Luo Yan was unhappy, Elder Shiding comforted him. "Don't be obsessed with this. Even if you can't unlock it, it's good to use it as a means of transportation. That's all I can do." Luo Yan sighed. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.